All right, everybody, good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started a little bit early. We're going to do this 15 minutes early because Monster Hunter Wilds, this is the Monster Hunter Wilds waiting room live stream. This is Tech Thursdays, episode 99. So we are just now 1 week away from episode 100 of the Tech Thursdays weekly show for all those tech enthusiasts out there. So we do these live every Thursday. You can ask any technical related question in the PC DIY, also known as the build your own PC space. We focus on this channel primarily on desktop gaming PCs as well as high-end workstations and high-end desktops. So that would be like Threadripper, for example. So we have covered Threadripper on this channel in the past. But most of the content recently is going to be around CPUs and GPUs in the consumer desktop space. And to a lesser extent, we also sometimes talk about laptop CPUs because there are a lot of interesting innovations happening in the mobile space that started last year and are continuing on this year. So I guess what we'll do to start off, we'll wait until the top of the hour to get into the main topics this evening. The primary one, if you guys can tell from the title of the live stream, is Monster Hunter Wilds. So the latest video on this channel, I put this video up this morning. It was for CPU benchmarks because when we were evaluating Monster Hunter Wilds back in November with the open beta test that was open for everyone, and then the one that happened, I think it was 2 weeks ago. It was basically, there was two different weekends in February this past month that you could participate in the online open beta test. And there was also the benchmarks. There's a lot of different ways to gauge the performance metrics for the upcoming Monster Hunter Wilds, which is about to launch in like about just over 3 hours? 3 hours from now. So I got 3 hours to do this live stream. So this was probably going to be a shorter one. And Monster Hunter Wilds, for those of you that are not aware of this franchise is so big in places like Japan that there are literally employers notifying their employees of like being out of office because of Monster Hunter. Like there's signs, there's Reddit posts about this. I'm not making this up. This is real. You can look it up. You can Google it. It's a really, really big franchise in Asia. It is huge, huge, huge franchise. And I was looking at my Steam playtime on Monster Hunter World, which includes Iceborne. So my total playtime for Monster Hunter World is just shy of 1,000 hours. My total playtime in that game on Steam is 992 hours. So that does not include PlayStation 4. So you could probably tack on another, like, I didn't play too much on PS4, but you can probably tack on like another 50, 60, 80 hours or so from PlayStation. So I've got over 1,000 hours total in Monster Hunter World. So, and I'm planning to spend a similar amount of time throughout the course of this year in Monster Hunter Wilds. So the game is going to be available in 3 hours and 11 minutes. So we're going to try to close this stream out as fast as possible because I am going to be playing the game immediately once it is out. So maybe we'll do, I don't know if we're going to do a live stream this evening because we literally are about to do a full live stream. But we will be streaming the game tomorrow. So if you're on the fence about the game, I highly recommend that you watch the video that I put out today that shows the CPU benchmarks. We are actually going to go through the metrics, the test results from that video, because when I played the open beta test and then I ran the benchmark is not really that representative of the actual game. It is somewhat approximate, but there are some serious challenges with running Monster Hunter Wilds. And I remember reading through the Steam forums, and there were countless posts of people complaining about poor optimization. Capcom is incompetent, and I thought to myself, and then when I saw those people post their PC specs, I'm like, the common trend of all these people who are complaining about the game is that they have DDR4 based PCs. DDR4 based PCs. I wonder what happens. So that got me so curious that I had to go and bust out, you know it, the OG, the 5800X. I had to bring the 5800X out of retirement. I had to wake it up from its cryogenic slumber and wake it up, bust out the old Crosshair 8 Hero Wi-Fi X570 chipset. Here we go. The OG, the very first motherboard to offer PCIe Gen 4. Here we go, AM4, waking up. And then I'm like, it's like, okay, we got this guy coming in. And then it's like, oh, you know what that means? Someone else is coming in. Yeah, we got Rocket Lake, 11th gen Intel. Wakes up, comes out of retirement, bolting through the door. Test me, says the 11700K. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we got to include the 11th gen, everyone's favorite Intel CPU from the pandemic era, the 11th gen Rocket Lake Z590. Here we go. So we're going to whip those out. So we're going to have some results here. If you didn't watch the video, you're about to get spoiled. So please go check out the video, like that video. That video took me like 3 days to make, by the way, so because I do have a day job, so it's like I literally had to spend 3 entire consecutive week nights working on that video because I got to build all those old computers. I had to go find the DDR4 memory, which I was pretty sure I knew where it was, and it wasn't where it was supposed to be. So I had to go find my old DDR4 RAM, had to go bust out all that stuff, go find a power supply, and then connect all that stuff together, and then get an SSD with Windows, get all the drivers updated, all that stuff. And then you have to do the same thing for Rocket Lake. You got to do the same thing for Alder Lake because we also got 12700K in the house. Can't forget about Alder Lake. So we had to test those 3. So basically, the bottom line is I wanted to see how the game handles or how the game runs on DDR4 based computers because everyone complaining about this game just so happens to be on DDR4 based machines. So I guess we're almost at the top of the hour. So, no, I do have a test bench setup. The test bench setup, I had to still go get the motherboards. I still had to go get the RAM. I still had to go get the SSD. Because you know what? I had to make sure that the SSD, because the SSD that I'm using is it's an old SATA-based M.2. I had to make sure that the motherboards that I was using I had to go find like which NVMe slot or which M.2 slot on the motherboard has the SATA capability. Because only, certain M.2 slots on the motherboards have SATA support. So yeah, that took like 3 evenings to make that one video. So yeah, it's a lot of work, especially because of all those old computers. 3600, you mean the Ryzen 3600? 3600 will, well, let's get into it. Let's actually go show the results. Because here's the thing that annoys me about Capcom, and here's one thing that I want to point out. So Capcom says if you have a Ryzen 5 3600, you are going to be able to do 30 frames per second with these GPUs. So it's a whole bunch of like iterations of various different GPUs plus these 3 CPUs. But the one thing that is clear, that is very clear, is that Monster Hunter Wilds is incredibly CPU bound. This is going to be the most CPU bound game of the year. If this game doesn't win Game of the Year, it will certainly win CPU bound Game of the Year. 100% it's going to win that award because it is so CPU bound. You need a monster CPU. And one of the things that we looked at when we were playing the beta test is we found that the limits of RE Engine is actually 12 threads. You can call them 12 cores, but it's really 12 threads. So what that means is RE Engine will allow Windows to assign game tasks up to 12 consecutive threads. 12 threads. That means if you have less than 12 threads, aka quad core, so for example, a quad core i7 from 2017, like an i7 7700K, a Kaby Lake 7th gen Intel, or a Skylake 6700K. If you have either of those CPUs, you will have a terrible sub 30 FPS experience in Monster Hunter Wilds. You can, even with the 5090, you will be getting 30 frames per second with an Intel quad-core i7 because you are so CPU bottlenecked that the 4 physical cores are completely overwhelmed and fully saturated at 100% CPU load. So these specs that Capcom is listing are the minimum specs. That means at minimum, you have to have 6 physical cores. 6 physical cores. The Ryzen 5 3600 has 6 cores, but then remember, it has the Dragon Ball Z split form technique, aka SMT, so it scales up to 12 threads. So RE Engine just so happens to max out at 12 threads. So, yeah, that's why these CPUs are listed here. The i3 12100 is a 4-core. No, are you sure? This is only 4? What about the E-cores? Doesn't it have E-cores? Isn't it like 4 plus 4 or something? Doesn't this have some E-cores? Oh, this is terrible. This shouldn't even be on the list then. No, this is going to get overwhelmed. Yeah. See, this is the reason why there are so many Steam posts of people complaining about the performance. And the general, like, if you had an AI analyze all the complaints it would summarize that people with DDR4 systems are complaining. That's what it would come up with from analyzing all the data. Because the people on DDR5 are not complaining, not nearly as much. Some of them might be complaining, but that's typically because those people are playing at like 4K resolution and they have unrealistic expectations of the GPU that they're using. You know, like there's usually, okay, there's two types of people that complain about the game, about the optimization of the game. It's people who are on DDR4 CPUs, or it's people who are trying to play the game maxed out at 4K with like a 4070 Ti. Like, I mean, come on, really? Really? Like, didn't you hear that the 4070 Ti is not a 4K GPU? Like, those type of people, I don't care what those people are saying. Those complaints are invalid complaints. But the people that are complaining about the game because their CPU is a DDR4 system, like, they're confused because they're probably looking at this list and like, hey, I mean, I have, you know, I've got one of these. Like, why is this so hard to run? And the other thing, too, is Capcom does not do a good job at, like, showing the difference, because one of the other things that I found very interesting when I was doing all these CPU tests with this game is the higher the resolution. So like if you're playing the game at 1440 or 4K, the CPU still uses more resources. Like, you would think that the game becomes more GPU bound, and it is true that it becomes more GPU bound the higher resolution you go, but what I found is that the game, like if you're playing the game at 4K versus 1080p, the CPU is actually stressed more at 4K than it is at 1080p. I found that really weird, and the results actually show, and this is probably the reason why. Here, let me bring up the results. Here, let me do this. Okay. Here we go. To move this out of the way, I can put this here. So, here are the scores for 1080p. Wait a minute, let me make sure that this is over here. Okay, you guys can see. Does the mouse show up? Okay, it does. Okay, so this is 1080p. At 1080p, notice the difference between the 5800X at almost 32,000 and the 9950X. That's like 5,000 points. Now, someone's like, oh, well, what about the difference between 9950X and the X3D? Because that's like 5,000 points. Yeah, that's true, but the difference, but see, again, that's because of X3D. Like, you take away the X3Ds, so it means 37,000 to 40,000. So like 13900K and 9950X, 37K to 40K is the range for the DDR5 CPUs. Forget about X3D. Ignore the X3D right now, because they're going to confuse people. So look at 13900K, 285K, and 9950X, and then look at 5800X, 12700K, and 11700K. The main difference between those six CPUs is the three at the bottom are on DDR4. The three at the top, or the three that are above them, are on DDR5. This indicates that the RE engine scales with memory bandwidth. It scales with memory bandwidth. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do in a follow-up video, because the 12700K supports DDR5, and the 13900K also supports DDR4. So what I'm going to do in a future video is I'm going to flip them around. I'm going to test 13900K with DDR4, and I'm going to test the 12700K with DDR5. So then we will see what happens when the newer Intel Raptor Lake gets kneecapped with DDR4, and the older Alder Lake is able to run with DDR5. So we're going to see what happens. I think that's going to be some pretty interesting content, because that is going to kind of test my hypothesis, because I said this when we were doing those live streams for the open beta test. You know, I said that this game looks like it scales with memory bandwidth, and these results seem to indicate that my theory is true, and we'll finally be able to test that using those two Intel CPUs. We're going to flip them around. We're going to basically put the 12700K in the Z790 Aorus Master, and we're going to take the 13900K and we're going to downgrade that thing into the Z690 Gaming X DDR4. So that'll be very interesting to see what happens there. Now, one of the things that was very interesting was the results of the 5800X. This is not an X3D CPU. I do not have a 5800X 3D. So I only have the Zen, you know, the two that are up here. So I'm very curious to know how either the 5800X 3D or the 5700X 3D would perform. Basically, what happens if you take Zen 3, you can't give Zen 3 DDR5, but you can give Zen 3 X3D. So that would be interesting to see if that test could be shown. So I don't know. Maybe we'll have to look into that. Would you like a 5800X 3D? What, for testing? Possibly. But you know, I think the two things that really show here are, number one, memory bandwidth, which seems to make the biggest difference. However, X3D makes a huge difference, because look at the difference between the 9950X and the 7950X3D. These two are 16-core dual CCD. One is the newer Zen 5 architecture. One is the older Zen 4 architecture. And this one doesn't clock as high as this one. Yet the X3D dominates the charts. It's straight up like it's the chart topper. And the other thing too is, because this game is so memory bound, the 9800X3D is a little bit kind of kneecapped because of the memory bandwidth. Because I don't know how many people know this, but like the Infinity Fabric on the Zen architecture, if you have only one CCD, the Infinity Fabric, that link to the CCD, that's the only memory pipe you have. If you have another CCD, then you got a whole nother pipe to that chunk of cores. So memory bandwidth on Ryzen 9 is going to be significantly better, provided the scheduler knows what to do for the game, and that is the reason why 7950X3D manages to beat the 9800X3D despite being slower, because it's Zen 4 versus Zen 5. Now, I think it has to do with the difference in memory bandwidth, because the Zen 5's architecture, yes, it's a little bit better than Zen 4 when it comes to gaming, but it's not like a huge uplift in gaming versus Zen 4. So I think what's really interesting here is the memory bandwidth and the core and thread count on the 7950X3D versus the 9800X3D. Because remember what I said earlier, the RE engine can scale up to 12 cores, and the 9800X3D only has 8 physical cores. So it's going to have to rely on SMT. And one way we tested the limits of RE engine was, if you guys tuned into the Threadripper live stream, Threadripper showed the full extent of how RE engine behaves when you flat out remove any sort of limitations on physical cores. Because Threadripper showed me instantly, I was like, I counted the cores, I counted the threads on the cores, and I was like, wow, this game actually does 12 cores. And sure enough, it scales to 12 threads. Somebody in one of the there was an interview with one of the there was a technical interview with one of the game developers from Capcom. It's all in Japanese. I have to find it, but basically they did confirm that it does scale to 12 cores. So a 12 thread, 12 core, whatever you want to call it. Windows, it'll be 12 threads. But yeah, RE Engine is incredibly CPU bound because it requires an insane amount of memory bandwidth. It requires an insane amount of cores, or thread count, we should say. I can't think of any other game that scales in such a way like this. So what's also interesting is if you guys watch the video, you'll see there's clips in there of me showing the taskbar from the various live streams, and you'll see how the Windows scheduler breaks up the work on these different CPUs, and it's very different depending on the CPU. Some of them, okay, for example, 13900K. 13900K, Intel's thread director leverages a power savings technology called core parking. So the 13900K utilizes core parking to effectively stop the hyper threads of the P cores from actually doing any work. But occasionally what you'll see, and you guys can go back and review the footage on the live stream because it's all on the live stream, the 13900K will shift occasionally the workload from the thread 0 of one core to thread 1, like the second thread of the same core. It'll ping pong back and forth, and the Intel thread director prevents this by utilizing a technique called core parking. So that is how it behaves on a 13900K. And that really helps the 13900K achieve the results that it's able to achieve. Because I will tell you guys, I was very impressed with Intel's 13th and 14th gen Raptor Lake. Raptor Lake, despite having access to no 3D V-cache, if you remove 3D V-cache, the 13900K is the chart topper for this game, for CPUs that do not have access to 3D V-cache. So, I mean, it's like 3,000 points above AMD's 9950X. I'll tell you guys, I was a little bit disappointed in the 9950X, because considering that is the computer that we're streaming on right now, and that is actually the computer that I plan to play the most hours in Monster Hunter Wilds. It will be on the 9950X until the 9950X 3D shows up. So that is my main computer. So it is very interesting looking at these results. So what did I mention? How is it at 4K? Okay, let's look at the results. So this is the frame rates, for those of you that see the frame rates. And you can see, this is a huge difference for, just look at how the bars scale. So okay, Rocket Lake is really interesting because Rocket Lake is supposed to be similar to Zen 3. But Rocket Lake basically gets destroyed in this benchmark for some reason. I don't know, man. RE Engine, Intel, everyone involved, they just don't like Rocket Lake. Rocket Lake, I feel sorry for the 11th gen because everyone Gamers Nexus called it a waste of sand. A lot of people made fun of it. Nobody wanted to actively broadcast that they were the proud owner of an 11700K or an 11900K because they would, if they were in the tech enthusiast community, they were kind of ridiculed. So I feel sorry for 11th gen because, man, looking at these results, it just gets destroyed by its rival. Its rival is the 5800X. You know what's weird? The 5800X is not meant to compete with the 12700K, but yet it actually beats 12th gen. This is the thing that's crazy, and I don't know why that is. One thing that sticks out to me, I do know most Twitch streamers that are not using pre-built computers are using a 5800X. I don't really know why, but I do know that the 5800X is a very popular CPU. Zen 3 in general is very popular in Asia. So, the Japanese market, if they're not on an Intel-based system, they're usually on a Zen 3 5800X. Or something from 2020, something from 2021. And that is when Zen 3 was basically peak. So I don't know if the developers went out of their way to optimize for that platform, but 5800X, this is insane. Like 93, it beats 12th gen. I had to run the test like 5 times for these to make sure that there wasn't some kind of weird thing going on here. But nope, it beat it every single time. So these are like across 5 run averages. The 5800X, all 5 runs, it beat 12700K. So that's insanely crazy that the 5800X is that far ahead of its longtime rival, the 11700K. So seeing these results, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. But this explains why people are complaining about the game. Because there's probably a lot of people that are on Zen 3, so like a Ryzen 5 3600 or a Ryzen 7 3800X, or an Intel 10th gen, Intel 9th gen. And for those wondering, Intel 10 and Intel 9, those numbers are going to be either equal to or worse than the 11700K. So those are the people that are complaining because they're having to leverage FrameGen. And just to reiterate, for those that didn't watch the video, these results you see on screen are without FrameGen. There is no FrameGen in these results. This is the native, natural frame rate with no FrameGen, no RT, just ultra preset in the benchmark. So this is the actual frame rate. There's no fake frames in these test results. So just to be clear on that. So 79 FPS at 1080p with a 7900 XTX is not a good result for people on a old 9900K or a 10900K or an 11900K or any of those older Intel CPUs. So, yeah, 12th gen underperformed. And I was always wondering, okay, 12th gen, because 12th gen is always such a mixed bag. And the reason why the 12th gen is always such a mixed bag is because there are people out there that have 12th gen on DDR4, which is what this result shows. And then there are those of the people out there, the gamers out there, that are on DDR5. And if you're on DDR5, you might have a completely different result from what is shown here. So that is definitely something that I will be doing as follow-up content. I will be testing 12700K with DDR5. I will be downgrading 13900K to DDR4 to see what happens. So, but the game scales with threads. So, that is the reason why the 7950X3D beats the 9800X3D, despite it being on an older architecture. So, fascinating results. I was thinking of the episode in Dragon Ball Z when Captain Ginyu was using the scouter to measure Goku's power level when Goku was powering up. And I was thinking, man, it's like 9800X3D and 7950X3D are just straight up Goku powering up in front of Captain Ginyu. And he's like, so this is the real you? What? 180,000? What? Like, because I was thinking, man, the game is so CPU bound, you're going to need like an insane amount of memory bandwidth, and you're going to need X3D special sauce to achieve the full power for this game. So, 13900K also, man, 13900K is good, but if it wasn't for the whole like VMin fiasco last year, the voltage degradation issues, there are still people out there that all they got to do is flash the new BIOS, and they're so scared to update their BIOS that they don't do it, and then their CPU ends up like dying. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad because this CPU feels like it's going to go down in history as a very controversial CPU, in the sense that it had like the self-destructive properties where it like kind of dies over time, but it was like actually pretty cool. It's basically Trunks from the Cell games, You remember when Trunks fought Cell while Goku and Gohan were in the hyperbolic time chamber, and he was like powering up with his big muscles? I think of 13900K as future Trunks with the really big muscles. And he moves really slow, but he's got really big muscles. Really high power, you know, Emperor Palpatine memes, unlimited power, you know, enough power to create the Galactic Empire. That's basically 13900K in my mind. So, really, really interesting results here. So, someone wanted to see the, okay, here's 1440p. And see, in 1440p, this is another thing that stuck out to me. So, as you go up in resolution, the game is still so hard for the CPU. It's overwhelming the cores. And because the 9800X3D is basically kneecapped to the single Infinity Fabric link, it starts becoming memory bandwidth starved. So now all it has is X3D to like basically carry it forward. So it's still able to eke out a win over 13900K. But man, look at 13900K with that memory bandwidth. It's closing the gap. It is gaining on that 9800X3. That thing must be sweating. Meanwhile, Goku up in front, 37,651. When I saw this result, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is how this is gonna force me to go buy 9950X3D. I am 100% getting the 9950X3D. When I saw this result, 7950X3D, way ahead of everybody else. This CPU is like 2 years old now, and it's still beating like everything. Wow. Man. But you can see things are starting to close up in terms of the score. And then here we go, the FPS numbers, 110.8. So that's basically 111, 104, 103.5. You can almost round the 13900K up to 104, so it almost ties. It's literally 1 FPS less than the mighty 9800X3D. And then we have Intel's Arrow Lake is also kind of narrowing the gap. And then Zen 5 is also narrowing the gap. And then you have the DDR4 guys back here. But yeah, 5800X is still beating 12700K. That is insane, man. 5800X. The good old 5800X. Oh, how the Japanese devs love that Zen 3 architecture. They optimize for that Zen 3 architecture. Rocket Lake bringing up the rear. Wow. You have a 750X not upgrading until GTA 6 releases on PC. Yeah, anyone who's on DDR5 doesn't really need to do anything. Like, the game is totally playable for anyone on DDR5. Because you have to remember, the real game is going to tax this down. So you can basically subtract like 5 frames from all of these results if you want to get more of like the real expected numbers for in-game, as opposed to the benchmark, because this is on Rails benchmarks right here. So I keep that in mind. And then finally 4K. Here's 4K. So here's the thing where now it's like, okay, now you're starting to hit a GPU limit because you're starting to see the bar charts close in on each other. All of them, even Rocket Lake is at like 24K. Basically, all the CPUs are in that like, what, from 24K to 25K. Well, I guess from 24K to 26K. There's like a 2,000 point range there, with Rocket Lake at the bottom, and then you have 750X3D at the top. So it's like a 2,000 point difference there from the worst and the best. And everyone else is kind of in between. But see, here's the thing. Notice this. At 4K resolution, the 13900K manages to overtake the 9800X3D. In fact, interestingly enough, the 285K also overtakes, but it's so small it's like a 200, like that's less than 200 points. So it's barely overtaking it. And actually, here's what's even more interesting. I just realized this. The OG 5800X is scoring higher. Now, granted, it's less than 200 points, but it is technically higher than the 9800X 3D. Now this kind of shows, hey, now we're starting to hit a GPU bottleneck, but the 7950X 3D is still way up there in front of everybody. So it's you can tell it looks like it's GPU bottlenecked, but still, you know, the CPU that's scoring the best is still the best. So, and then here are the frame rates. So the frame rates range from 70.5 to 76.5 at the end of the day. So you got a 5, no, you got a 6, 70 to 76. So you got like a 6 FPS spread between the all 8 CPUs tested. So very, very interesting results overall. X3D, man, X3D is where it's at though. Like just looking at the results. So here's the breakdown in terms of if they're faster or slower in the percentages. So the 5800X is 17% faster than its rival. And this is like a clear-cut victory for the 5800X. 5800X is the oldest CPU on this list. It's funny to me, it's funny that some people think or forget that the 5800X is older than the 11700K. See, that shows you how bad the 11th gen Intel was. Because the 11th gen Intel was newer and it loses, and then over time it loses by even wider margins. So 5800X, man, this is the OG. This was the nirvana, the zen moment where the stars aligned and AMD was just straight up better than Intel, you know, like in 2020. You couldn't argue that. Like the best Intel had back then was 10th gen. It was 10th gen versus the 5000 Ryzen series. And 10th gen was just straight up worse. So, and look at this, man. This shows me, like, the people who invested in AM4, man, they're laughing to the bank because that was a good investment. AM4, totally good investment. The fact that this thing straight up beats even the 12th gen. The 12th gen. The 12th gen is a whole year newer than the 5800X. And it loses. So all my tests were done using the built-in benchmark, so I don't have the 1% lows. But no, I don't really notice any of them. You would have seen them. I would have seen them in the that frame time chart that it was showing. We will be doing live stream content with some of these to look for stuff like that. But from my point of view, the DDR4 CPUs would be the only ones that you'd have to worry about stuttering. And even then, I don't think it was that noticeable. So for the most part, they're all playable. Even the 11th gen. Even the 11th gen is playable. But you look at how it compares to DDR5. And this is what I mean. Like, looking at this graph shows me that DDR5, there's a huge gap now between DDR4 and DDR5. Meaning RE Engine scales with memory bandwidth. And I think this is going to be true for newer games going forward. So if you're still on a DDR4 platform, just know that you're going to start being severely limited in the future as newer games come out that take advantage of DDR5 and the memory bandwidth that it offers. So, I mean, look at this. Like, the Zen 5 is like 15%. Intel Core Ultra is 17%. 1300K is like 20. X3D Zen 5 is 25%, 27% in favor of the 7950 X3D. And then we look at the 11th gen. 11th gen loses to all of them. So Alder Lake is like 11% better. Zen 3, its rival, is 15% better. I'm only using the 1080p numbers here because the 1080p numbers, I mean, 1080p is the gray. You guys can see the scale. Those are the ones that indicate the biggest CPU bottleneck. So that's why we look at the 1080p. The 4K, they're all kind of closing in on each other, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really tell us anything interesting other than the fact that the game scales with high core count. So the fact that 13900K beats 9800X3D at 4K indicates to me that the difference is going to be due to the cores, the core advantage that the 1300K has. And But then you look at it like, okay, well, what happens when 1300K goes up against an actual equivalent? You know, like I look at it like this. Like I think of 1300K is Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, and the 9800X3D is like Kid Gohan. You know, like, okay, is it a fair fight for Vegeta to fight Kid Gohan? No. See, 9800X3D is a different price tier, different market segment. Yes, it's consumer desktop. Yes, it's the best gaming CPU, but I don't think 1300K versus 9800X3D is a fair fight. It's not fair because it makes both of them look good in certain areas, but make them look bad in other areas. What do I mean by that? 1300K looks like it's a power hog, and it costs way more money than 9800X3D. But you compare 9800X3D to 1300K, 1300K destroys 9800X3D in multi-thread, for example. So the correct comparison is 1300K versus 9950X and 7950X3D. And when it goes against 7950X3D, it gets raffle stomped because 7950X3D is like half the electricity and still way better performance, and it runs a lot colder. You can stick like a ghetto air cooler on that Goku CPU, and it just runs circles around the 1300K. So even at 4K resolution. So, when you're comparing like Vegeta to Goku, then Goku obviously is winning. You compare Vegeta to like Kid Gohan, and it's like, okay, Kid Gohan still somehow like beats up Vegeta, but then like not at like 4K. So it's kind of an interesting match. These are all stock. Oh, we'll talk about the AMD Live thing soon. So anyway, let's get through some of these. So 12700K, you can see 12700K, it loses to all the DDR5s. So I need to retest it with DDR5 to see what happens. But it even loses to Zen 3. That's hilarious. All right, 13900K, it beats everything except X3D. X3D beats it. Except at 4K, the 9800X3D seemed to struggle with running out of cores. But it's like 2% difference. So that was interesting. But yeah, X3D is kind of no contest. Ryzen 9 750X3D clean sweep victory beats everything on the chart, including the 9800X3D. So this one's straight up Goku. This is Goku from Dragon Ball Z, as far as I'm concerned. This thing can go Super Saiyan 3. This thing has like an ace up its sleeve every single time. It just can come back. I don't know. It just never loses. All right, then we have the Ryzen 9 9950X. This CPU, I'm surprised. Okay, I'm not actually super surprised. The thing that was kind of crazy was the fact that this CPU is like literally middle of the pack. This one and the Intel Core Ultra. So 9950X. Hold on, where is... This CPU is middle of the road in terms of all the ones tested. So this is like a production PC, just like 1300K. It also uses similar amounts of power as 1300K, but it's not as hard to cool, if that makes sense. So this one was not touching 100 degrees. The other one was, 4K, you'll never notice the difference. So in terms of like those big content creator workstation type things like the 9950X, it's a solid performer. But the one that was also kind of cool was this one. The Intel Core Ultra. Intel Core Ultra did pretty good too. Did surprisingly well. I thought it was going to actually... it kind of fell where I expected. So Intel Core Ultra and the Zen 5 9950X, those two CPUs are going to be time immemorial rivals. They are going to fight against each other until the next generation of CPUs. So, Yeah, not too much to say there. And then we have the 9800 XD. This one beat everything except the 7950 XD because this one's running out of resources. So, but yeah, I can see why a lot of people are buying these because these are pretty good. These are very, very solid performers for gaming. This thing like sips power. I think the most it uses for this game is like 63 watts or something while playing the game. And that's at stock, so you can do whatever undervolt nonsense you want and make it run at like 50 watts while performing probably 2% better or whatever. So we might look at that in future content. So one of the things that I do want to test is I want to test overclocking, and I want to test DDR5 on Alder Lake and DDR4 on Raptor Lake. So those are the extra content that we can expect to see with Monster Hunter Wilds in the future. And that's pretty much it. So I encourage you guys to watch the full video. I have the full spec sheet for how all the systems that were tested are in the video. So go watch the video. Like the video. That video took, like I said, 3 days to make. So I don't normally make a lot of those type of videos because they're, as you can imagine, for a one-person show, it's very time-consuming. But yeah. Budget HEDT. Right now, there's two CPUs that I recommend for budget HEDT. 9950X and Intel Core Ultra. These two CPUs are what I consider budget HEDT. They're not really gaming CPUs. I mean, technically Intel, like, the best gaming CPU on Intel is actually 14th gen, but I don't feel confident recommending 14th gen because it's a 2023 processor. It's a dead socket. There's no upgrade path. And, you know, there's the whole thing about the voltage. Although i7s should not have that problem, as far as I know. So it's, I don't know. Like, Intel's in a weird spot when it comes to recommending, like, gaming PCs. If anyone's building a gaming PC, I just straight up tell them get an X3D. It's a no-brainer. I mean, you guys can see, like, these results. Like, get an X3D for gaming. It's so obvious from these results. You don't want to be... It's like, oh, well, what if I play, you know, like, League of Legends? Well, then it doesn't really matter. You don't even need a new CPU. But if you play anything like Monster Hunter or MMOs or games that just have a lot of large open environments with a lot of NPCs... time of day events, all kinds of things that are running in the background, those are going to benefit from having a high-end CPU, a modern DDR5 CPU with X3D, because X3D is basically the secret Super Saiyan 3 ability that the Ryzen CPUs currently have that allow them to just deal with, we'll call it poor optimization. Poor optimization. You don't like when developers do poor optimization? Well, then get an X3D and you don't have to worry about poor optimization. Because X3D literally goes SSJ3 and brute forces its way through, quote unquote, poor optimization. So that's my recommendation. These test results tell me, man, I can't wait anymore for the this. Yeah, I can't wait, man. I want the 950X 3D so bad right now. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. It's coming out the second week of March. We have literally 2 weeks to wait. I gotta make it through 2 weeks. Just 2 more weeks to get this CPU. 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks of Monster Hunter with no 9950X 3D. Oh, man. So, if you're someone who wants to not have to worry about poor optimization, get an X3D. It's that simple. All right. So, I will be getting this day one. I will be getting the 950X3D day one. This is an instant drive to Micro Center and buy it before the scalpers do. immediately. Day one. Now, I don't think it's going to get gobbled up as quickly, although I don't know, man, because we don't know how the reviews are going to be. If the reviews are like, whoa, it's so good, it's so wonderful, buy it now, Linus approves, Jay approves, Steve approves, then you know the scalp. That's how you turn on all the scalpers. It's like thumbs up, Jay, thumbs up, Linus, thumbs up, Der Bauer, yeah, it's good, it's efficient. Okay, you know what? They just enabled all the scalpers because now the scalpers are going to go gobble it up. They're going to gobble it up. Just like the 5090. They're just going to gobble it up. So, 9900 X3D is good also. That's good. I just want the 16 cores. I just want 16 cores. So I'm getting it day one immediately. Immediately. In fact, because of Monster Hunter Wilds, if it wasn't because of Monster Hunter Wilds, I would actually probably be more interested in the 9070 XT, which we're about to switch topics to that here in a little bit. But I'm actually more interested in the 9950 X3D than the 9070 XT. Like this thing, yes, it is going to be March 12th or March 13th, depending on where you are in the world. So we literally have 2 weeks to wait for the 9950 X3D. But like I said, this CPU is it's like a must-have as far as I'm concerned because, let's go back here. Because of this, and this, especially the 1440p, like, because of these results, when I see 16-core X3D, like, beating 8-core X3D, I'm like, okay, yeah. And I'm going to be playing probably, like, 500 hours minimum in this game. Yeah, this is like, 9950 X3D literally went from nice to have to, like, I must have this day one. Like, this is a required purchase for the channel. That's what happened. It like took full priority. Like this, the 9950 X3D is now more important than like the 5090. Man. So yeah, 2 weeks out. We only got 2 weeks left to wait. We will probably be doing a full review. We're going to be doing overclocking content. We're going to be looking at like the full thing, like 4 sticks of memory, all that stuff with 9950 X3D. We're probably even going to I'm considering doing a live stream PC build for the 9950 X3D. Now, it's not going to be a full build. It's literally probably just going to be me live streaming the CPU swap. That's literally all it is. And I think it's going to go in the godlike. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? Should the 9950 X3D, is it worthy of the godlike, or should it go in the other computer? Where is that other computer? This one. This is the computer. This is Tech Thursdays, for those that are not in the know. So this is currently what we're live streaming on right now. With the 9950X. We got 4 sticks DDR5. We got all that stuff.
Should I go back to 64 gigabytes 6000 or stay with 48 gigabytes 8000 when I get the 9950X3D?
That's a great question. So technically, you know, if you go off of Adobe and the Creative Apps recommendation, so you guys have heard of me talk about, you know, how do you determine what's a good amount of system RAM? It's based off of your CPU. So the rule of thumb is, and this is not, I'm not making this up. This comes from Adobe with their Premiere, with Puget Bench, all the various different professional applications. A lot of them have this, it's like, we'll call it an unwritten rule of thumb when it comes to system requirements for a lot of these professional apps. Now remember, this doesn't apply to gaming, so you don't have to follow this advice, but in general, the custom is for every CPU core you have, for a balanced PC to not have issues with resource contestation, we'll say. So basically what that means is like in Windows, the scheduler having trouble allocating memory for cores, and you'll have like potential bottleneck going on at the memory subsystem. So in order to avoid that, you want to dedicate 4 gigabytes of system memory for every physical core your CPU has. So if you do the math, a 16 core 9950 X3D should have 64 gigabytes of memory as a recommended amount. So technically, if you want to follow the guidance from those software developers, you would want to go back to your 64 gigabytes. But that doesn't mean you can't run it with 48 gigabytes and see how it performs and see like what's your typical memory usage while gaming, while doing stuff. Because 48 gigabytes for most people will be totally fine. So I'm actually in the same boat that you are. So if I choose to put the 9950 X3D in this machine, it will be paired up with 4 sticks of DDR5 running at either 6000 or 6400. Currently, this memory, all 4 sticks are running with 100% stability. Hence, how are we able to live stream if it's not stable? At 6400. So this is on a 9950X with the MSI X870E Godlike. So this is not your typical run-of-the-mill, PC. This is like more like a mini HEDT workstation computer meant for content creation. But that doesn't mean you cannot game on one of these beast machines. So, yeah, this is 96 gigabytes of memory. So for me, most likely I'll put the 9950 X3D in the Godlike, and it'll just straight up replace the 9950X. But I'm not 100% sure on that. The alternative is I could remove the 9800 X3D from my gaming PC, and I could upgrade that PC to the 9950 X3D, and I can continue using the 9950X with the Godlike. So I haven't fully figured out like what I want to do. All I know is I really, really want the 9950 X3D. Like 9950 X3D is like a must buy. Like this is more important to me than like trying to get a 5090 at this point. It has top priority. Maybe more so than trying to get like a 9070 XT as well. So because Capcom's game is so CPU bound, like this makes more of a difference than like a 5090 would. Potentially, we'll see. But for my own testing, that seems to be the case. Does 7800 XT have dual encoders? Is it good for live stream? Yeah, it's good for live streaming. We are streaming on a 7900 XTX, by the way. So here, let me do one thing here. We are kind of done with the benchmark results, so let's change this. Here we go. So this is the computer that we're streaming on right now. So you can see, let me get this out of the way. So you can see we have 16 cores. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the top 2 rows are 8 cores. But remember the Dragon Ball Z split form technique. So each of them is dual thread. So you have 16 threads off of one CCD, and then you have 8 more cores down here. So you have 16 more, you have 16 threads down here on the second CCD. So you have a total of 32 threads. So 16 cores, 32 threads. So this is the 9950X. So this is definitely a high-end. It's like a mini high-end desktop PC. That's what I refer to it as. And then for the live stream, we are using the encoder on the 7900 XTX to encode the live stream. So for the question earlier, like, can you use a 7800 X3D for live streaming? Absolutely. It is an excellent choice. It also has an AV1 encoder as well. So yeah, no, there's no reason. The streams on that will look just as good as the streams that I'm doing. Will you test 256 gigabyte? No, because I'd have to figure out how to get that kit. I don't know where to get that kit. It's not available at Micro Center yet. In the future, I probably will. But that depends on when Micro Center gets it in. I wonder how the 9070 XT encoder will stack up against NVENC for AV1. One thing I will say about that memory kit, like the Crucial, I mean, if you really need the capacity, you can do that, I guess. Yeah, you can do... I saw Linus's video. I saw the live stream from Linus, and he was showing that memory kit that you're referring to, the Crucial memory kit. You do realize, though, that that is not Hynix memory, right? So anytime you buy memory from Crucial, it is always going to be Micron. You know why? Because Crucial is a brand of Micron. So all Crucial memory is Micron memory. So if you're someone who, if you care about only the capacity, then yeah, that's totally fine. But if you're someone who wants to overclock the RAM, you're not going to be buying that memory kit. That memory kit is not meant for high speed. 6000 is going to be the max speed on it. But yeah, that one, that would be nice to have. That would be very nice to have, actually, because you could do 128 gigabytes across 2 sticks, which would be very good. But I'm all about 4 sticks of memory. I like the way 4 sticks looks, hence the reason why I'm running 4 sticks of memory in my workstation, my high-end desktop. All right, well, it's not a true high-end, because true high-end is Threadripper. We've kind of established that on this channel with this audience. So people who watch this channel know what a true high-end desktop is. This is not a true high-end desktop. This is a mainstream desktop that's pretending to be a high-end desktop. But that's besides the point. I just like 4 sticks of memory. It looks nice, so we're going to run 4 sticks of memory. And the secret is run single-rank DIMMs. Don't run dual-rank DIMMs. If you're someone who needs 256 gigs of memory, you either need to be on Threadripper or you better not care about high speed. And this is true not for just AMD. This is also true for Intel. In fact, we'll probably do some content with Intel soon. We're probably going to take another look at Arrow Lake and see what 4 sticks of memory on Arrow Lake is like. Because I've read a lot of people, I've read a lot of things online that are completely incorrect when it comes to memory on Intel. So there's a lot of confusion on Intel platforms. Because people are buying into the platform for productivity, and then they're wondering why their files are getting corrupted. And it's because they're running too much memory at too high of a speed. So we need to clarify that. And I haven't really addressed Intel memory 4 DIMMs on Intel in a long time. We looked at it back in 2023 on a 13900K and found that the 1300K cannot do above 4800 if you're doing 128 gigs or 192 gigs. So I want to see if Arrow Lake improves that at all. Okay, so that covers that. So let's change topics here. So that covers Monster Hunter. Let's see. So we can either talk about the 9070 XT or we can talk about the RTX 5070. Or we can talk about something else. We have a number of topics lined up. Oh, one final thing I want to point out is Monster Hunter Wilds is available for free if you are upgrading your PC. So right now, there are AMD bundles. So if you guys remember Intel and AMD both have game bundles right now. So if you buy a Intel Core Ultra CPU, not 14th gen, it has to be Intel Core Ultra. It has to be Arrow Lake. If you buy an Intel Core 7, I don't think it applies. Well, maybe it applies to this one. I think it's all of them, actually. If you buy an Intel Core Ultra, you can get Assassin's Creed Shadows for free. So if you're someone who is a big fan, if you're really looking forward to Assassin's Creed Shadows, Intel Core Ultra gets you that game for free. Alternatively, you can buy an Intel Battlemage GPU, like a B580, for example, and you will get Assassin's Creed Shadows for free. We will be playing that game on stream next month. It comes out in, I think, the middle of March or something. I know it comes out soon. Let me see. When does it come out? Yeah, it comes out March 20th. So if you upgrade to Intel, you get Assassin's Creed Shadows. However, if you upgrade to AMD, you get Monster Hunter Wilds. Now, this was just announced earlier this week, so I wish I would have known about this ahead of time, but I don't have any way of knowing. So this is a pretty good bundle, but it's kind of interesting. So the qualifying products are all of the non-X3D Zen 5, and then it has most of, but not all, the non-X3D Zen 4 CPUs, and then it has most of, but not all, the RDNA 3 GPUs. So what I find funny about this is I literally just made the CPU tier list video for Monster Hunter Wilds, and these CPUs are fine. Like, you don't need frame gen if you have any of these CPUs, as my benchmark results show. But the chart toppers are not on this list. The X3D CPUs are not on this list, which I find kind of ironic, because those are literally the best CPUs for Monster Hunter Wilds, but none of them are a qualifying product. And I understand what AMD is trying to do here. AMD is probably having a hard time selling these other CPUs because I think like 80% or more of their desktop sales are all X3D at this point, but in particular the 9800 X3D. So they're probably like, hey, we're constantly selling out of 9800 X3D, but we have like all these other CPUs that we need to get rid of. So that's probably why they're not allowing the X3D to be eligible for a free copy of Monster Hunter Wilds. So it's kind of a letdown, but I understand where they're coming from because, and these CPUs are totally fine for the game. It's not like you're going to have a bad experience with these. I mean, most of my playtime is going to be on a 9950X, at least for the next 2 weeks. So, there's that. And then the GPUs, these are all really good GPUs. RE Engine favors Radeon over GeForce slightly. It's not a whole lot, but it does favor that. We can prove that with the Resident Evil 4 benchmarks. And you can see Resident Evil 4 benchmarks show that for the equivalent. So let's look at the equivalent. So we're going to remove the 4090 from these results because that's not equivalent. So you can see the 7900 XTX beats the 4080. The 7900 XTE, or the XT, beats the 4070 Ti. The 1600 XT is like slightly better than 3090 Ti. But technically 3090 Ti is supposed to be 10% faster than 6900 XT. So, that shows that this is like significantly better. And then 6800 XT beats 3080 and so on. So you go to like 1440p. Now you see the gap starts shortening. And then when you're at 4K, then it kind of like widens up depending on the GPU. But Ampere starts flexing its memory bandwidth once you get up to 4K. But yeah, that is interesting. Its 3090 Ti still loses to the 7900 XT at 4K in this game. So this does indicate that RE Engine games favor Radeon architecture, and this probably has more to do with the PlayStation being based off of AMD Silicon, and that's probably something there. There's probably some kind of similarities there at a fundamental machine code level, and that's probably why, yeah, it makes sense to have like the Radeon bundle in there. However, unfortunately, depending on where you are in the world, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to buy these GPUs. In fact, Newegg is completely sold out of all 4 of these GPUs. So it is now impossible, at least if you're in North America, it is impossible to purchase any of these 4 GPUs brand new from Newegg or Micro Center. They're all 100% sold out nationwide. The only listings that you'll find are third-party scalpers online on Amazon and Newegg. We're gonna talk about the Thermal Grizzly announcement that is on. We're gonna talk about that. So that's gonna be on here. So let's talk about 9070 XT, because 9070 XT might get added. AMD has done this in the past, where they will retroactively add newer stuff to their game bundle. And then I guess for laptops, just to cover that, there's a bunch of laptops on here. So any of the new Strix Point based and Strix Halo, it's nice to see them on there. So that's really good. I think there's a lot of Hawk Point on here as well, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, if you buy a laptop, you can also get Monster Hunter Wilds for free, depending on the laptop. So, but anyway, 9070 XT and 9070 might get added to this list retroactively in a couple of weeks. So they've done this in the past, so they could do it here just as easily. Now let's talk about 9070 XT. So 9070 XT, it's expected to see a $600 to $700 price tag. Remember what I said? I said $649. I still stand by that number. I don't see a reason to change from that number. You can see here, there's a bunch of Micro Center listings for very high prices for some reason. That's interesting. $700 for an ASRock, $730 for an XFX Swift triple, whatever that is. Is that magnetic air? That doesn't look like, I can't tell. I can't tell from the picture. Yeah, that sounds awful. But see, these prices are also really bad. So I don't know. The GPU market is really messed up right now. That's why the GPU market, I feel like I feel so burned out about talking about graphics cards. That's why I feel so much more enthusiastic about talking about CPUs instead. Because we talked about GPUs probably for the last like 2 months straight. Like every weekly show has always been talking about GPUs for like 3 hours. So I am really burned out about talking about graphics cards. I really don't want to talk about graphics cards, but the 9070 XT is coming out soon, so we do need to cover that one. And the 9070 is also coming out. So they're probably going to be like around, I don't know, 700, 650 to 700, and then $100 less for the other one, for the 9070. These prices don't look good, though. I'll tell you that. This does not look good. But again, it's going to depend on the performance of the graphics card. And I don't think we have a full good picture of... We have a general idea. So it says here, here's another article. AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT stress tested in Furmark. Performs equivalent to 4080. While remaining incredibly cool at 55 degrees. Okay, wow. So, AMD Radeon, whatever this is, 1080p, 345 FPS firm mark. RTX 4080 in 1080p firm mark scores 344 FPS. So it looks like it's equivalent. That's actually very good. The maximum temperature of the 4080 is 76 degrees. The maximum temperature of the Gigabyte Gaming OC 9070 XT is 55. Wow, okay, that's... This one is a Founders Edition, this 4080. But yeah, that's really good. That's very good, actually. Wow. These are also results with a 5800 X3D. I don't know how much that plays into it. Very good. You think that AMD is going to miss an opportunity to get larger share of the market by overcharging for the new GPU? Hardware Unboxed tested Oris Master 5090 and it was running 65C. Okay, the other thing too is we don't actually know what the sound profile was for this temperature. I can't imagine that's going to be quiet at 55 degrees. But who knows? Okay, AMD reportedly won't release... This is probably the most annoying article about this GPU. For me, personally, the fact that they're saying that it will not have a reference model. This is not good. Okay? This is not good. You always want a reference card to be available. Because when there's no reference card, there'll just be like a suggested MSRP. And that means that the AIB guys can do whatever they want. And that's the reason why you've got like $1,000 5070 ties. Because there's no actual Founders Edition card. So there's basically no anchor to the price point. Without a Founders Edition, without a reference AMD card, there's no anchor to the reference price point. So they can do whatever they want, and that's why you're seeing all these stupidly overpriced 5070 ties, and it's a huge mess, and this is the reason why I don't like talking about GPUs. Because, especially 5070 tie, that is probably the most underwhelming graphics card that NVIDIA has ever launched. So, yeah, 5070 Ti it feels like complete trash in my mind. I'd much rather have 4080 or 4080 Super, to be honest. And that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting rid of that 4080 Super anytime soon. Especially since it's the FE version, which is the most coveted version of 4080 Super ever made. So for some reason, everyone loves the Founders Edition. And I'm holding on to my Founders Edition. I ain't getting rid of that thing. I'd much rather have my wonderful 4080 Super Founders Edition than any of those garbage-looking 5070 ties. Anyway, and you know, 4080 Super, that was $999 at Best Buy January last year when I got it. So that's called easy mode right there. But hey, anyway, you got to know how to time the market. So AMD excludes reference. See, I don't like hearing this. AMD excludes the reference variant from the list. Okay, so that basically means they're like, okay, guys, we can say the price is $600, $649, but there's no reference card, so we don't hold the AIBs to it. They can do whatever they want. So I wouldn't be surprised if Asus tries to sell one of these for like $1,000. And sure enough, in that other article, not this one. Where's the other one? Not that one. This, sure enough, Asus, $1,050. Power Color, Reaper. Okay, that doesn't make any sense because that isn't even an XT. I don't understand what Power Color is doing. That's hilarious. And then Reaper Triple for $1,100. This is what happens when you don't have a reference card. So, wow. Asus is so out of touch with reality. I don't know what Power Color's doing though. Like really, $1,100 for the Reaper? That isn't even the Red Devil. That's the Reaper. What? That might just be placeholders for Micro Center. So I don't think those are the real prices. These other ones look more realistic though. But still, $900 for Gigabyte Gaming OC. It's like you're buying a discounted 4080. it's like you're buying another discounted 4080. That's what it feels like. Apparently, the XTX and the 4080 are the maximum performance that the GPU chip designers are capable of achieving for a very long time. What do I mean by this? It means the 7900 XTX and the RTX 4080. Okay, to illustrate this, now we bring out Paint. So now we go to Paint time. So here we go. 2022. 2022. Here we go. Q4 2022. RTX 4080 and RX 7900 XTX together. So these two came out. They offer, we'll say that they perform. This guy performs like this. This guy performs like this. You can't tell the difference. It's supposed to be ambiguous on purpose. So this is the performance. Then here we are. Q1 2025, so literally 2 years later. 2 years later. You get RTX 5070 Ti. You get, in fact, hold on, no. Disrespect this card. 5070 Ti, lowercase. He gets lowercase. RTX 5070 Ti, lowercase. And then you get the RX 9070 XT. And guess what? The performance of this is like this. The performance of this is like this. So my point is, the performance has not changed. For this, $1,200. For this, $1,000. How much is this? What's the going price for this? Like $900 or something? And what is this supposed to be? Like $800? So basically, you're getting like discounted. So after 2 years, you're paying, if you waited 2 years, you save, in the case of NVIDIA, you save roughly $300. In the case of AMD, you're saving roughly $200. So think of it like, assuming this is the price. Now, we could be completely off because I don't know what the price is. We're just going to use this. We're going to use the high number just because to illustrate something. The point is, you got to look at the opportunity cost. Why I'm saying this GPU is garbage. Because if you waited 2 years and like 2 months, so if you waited 26, 27 months to upgrade your GPU, meaning you completely skipped the 40 series altogether, you missed your chance, you didn't care. You didn't care about the Super, you just forgot about it, whatever, you don't care. For $300, you wasted 2 years of your life being unable to obtain, due to whatever the reasons, to not upgrade. But meaning the opportunity cost of not spending this much money back in 2023 to do the upgrade and waiting all the way till now, hoping that things would get better, that the next generation would be so much better. But look, now, fast forward 2 years, and 3 months, and you get a $300 discount for the exact same performance. Was that worth waiting more than 2 years? Was that worth waiting more than 2 years? That is, do you understand why I say this is a garbage value GPU? Do not buy, it's terrible. Because it's like, because the thing is, I know people are going to buy it. Regardless of me saying don't buy this card, people are still going to go buy it. Because they can't buy this, they can't buy this, the ship has sailed on those are gone. They're gone. These aren't options anymore. So their only choices are this or this. Now we don't know how, like this is, we don't know. We don't know how much, we will know tomorrow in less than 24 hours. We will know the truth. The secrets will be revealed. I'm still debating whether or not I should live stream my live reaction of the AMD thing. So, this could be the make or break moment for the gamers, because this is literally the only one remaining. This is straight up Yoda and Obi-Wan in episode 3 of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Everyone's dead. All the Jedi are dead. All the Order, what is it? Execute Order 666 or whatever. All the Jedi are dead. All of them are dead. Darth Vader came in, killed all of them. The Jedi Temple. Everyone's seen that movie. So, all you got is Obi-Wan and Yoda. You know what? You got Obi-Wan and Yoda. Like, this thing needs to get out of here. This thing doesn't even need to be here. This thing's so bad. Let's get out of here. Alright, so this is it. That's all you got. You got the last remaining Jedi of episode 3. They're the only ones left. So they can either succeed. How do you spell his name? Obi-Wan. Is that how you spell his name? Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan. You can either succeed or you can fail. Very simple. Very simple choices. You can either succeed or you can fail. So the choice, if you guys watch the Gamers Nexus video that Steve put out about the whole AMD thing, message to AMD or whatever it was called, that, you know, the video with the red marker and the weird memes and the really strange laugh that he did, and the Jon Snow to Gandalf the White memes. That's another good video to watch, besides the video that I released on the Monster Hunter CPU benchmark. But there's only 2 choices. You either succeed. So if you guys don't understand what I'm talking about, in the movie, Obi-Wan wins his battle against Anakin. So he wins. And no one expected him to win. Obi-Wan was always the underdog. Obi-Wan was always that Jedi that was always kind of like underrated. You know, like he was less talented than Anakin. He wasn't the chosen one. He was just some regular Jedi. He was an above average Jedi, but he was always like underrated, underappreciated, and he managed to succeed. He rose to the occasion. Meanwhile, you have Yoda, the one that everyone thought was like so good. He's got all the skills of a Jedi master. He's so fantastic. No one can beat him. Unbeatable. Team Green failed. Into exile he had to go. So basically, the ball is in AMD's court. They can kind of try to fix the GPU market. It's really, they're the only ones that can at this point. Yeah, that Gamers Nexus video was really good at kind of summarizing the state of the industry that we're in when it comes to GPUs. The GPUs is not a good time to be in. It's not a good time to be in the market for a GPU unless the AMD cards are really, really good. So, yeah. So, I don't know what to say besides that. Who here is getting a GPU this year? Or who here has already bought a GPU this year? Who here needs to upgrade? And when I say you need to upgrade, if you need to upgrade, you need to be like on 20 series or older. I get, because technically, I guess 30 series and RDNA 2 can still again sit this one out, but it's gonna be like a tough wait. Hold on, what was that article about? Someone was saying there was like an article, the price of it in China or whatever. Like, what was that? Video card Z. What was the name of that article? I'm on the video card Z. Where is this at? Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Radeon might cost $599. Wait, for real? Huh. So it's launching on the 6th of March? My Chinese is really bad. Doesn't that say that it launches on the 6th? Available 6, and then the product announcement full details are on the 28th? Is that what that says? Huh. Wait, it's that? Wait, hold on a second. Wait a minute. If it's really coming out on the 6th, that means it launches before the 9950X3D? Because 9950X3D comes out the second week of March. That's going to be March 12th or March 13th. So wait a minute. That means 9070 XT is coming out before the big X3D? Huh. Wow. Okay, well, they didn't really... Okay, well, that's interesting because that means they literally... That means this... What this says is it's gonna... So we're gonna know the price tomorrow, guys. Like, they're gonna tell us the price. They're going to announce the... Whatever. They're gonna give you the full details. And you know what's cool? You can actually see the AIBs in here. Did they get a better picture? Wait a minute. What? Oh, man. See, this is getting on my nerves. They show these reference cards in the marketing slide, and you can't even buy the reference cards. That's lame. Those are some nice looking render. Those renders of those reference cards look really cool. I like the look of the reference card. If they made the reference card, I'd probably just get the reference card, to be honest. That thing looks nice. They really like using that reference model that you can't even buy. So, okay, so on... Let me see if I got this right. So on the left, I don't know... it's too fuzzy. I can't read that. The Mandarin. I can't read the Hanzi. It's too blurry for me. Power color is right here. Then you have ASRock, then Asus, and then you got Sapphire. It looks like the Nitro is the one right there. That's the Sapphire Nitro. And then you have the Gigabyte and the XFX. So that means TUL was there too. PC Partner, TUL, and the Pine Group. Wait, Pine Group is there too. Interesting. That's really good. Okay, so we will... That means it's going to get announced tomorrow. Depending on where you are in the world, it already is the 28th. And it's going to go on sale a week after the announcement. So that sounds kind of like an NVIDIA, like an old school NVIDIA launch. Because NVIDIA used to do that. NVIDIA used to announce something, and then it would launch literally the following week. That's how they launched the 1080 and the 1070. Well, the 1070 came like a few weeks after 1080. And they did the 780 and the 770, the 680, all the NVIDIA cards up until Up until they decided to rebrand with that dumb RTX nomenclature. Then they started screwing up their launches. Or they started elongating the period of launching the product to build up so much hype. You'd like a white Sapphire 9070 XT? They'll probably have one. It's going to be called the Pure. So Sapphire, let's go over the brands. Let's go over branding so you guys know what to look for if you're looking in the market for one of these. So, all right, we're going to go over all of them now. So Sapphire is one of the most reliable brands for AMD cards. They've always been one of the best AMD partners. They're my top choice. So they have Nitro Plus, or you can just say Nitro. But anyway, we'll just say Nitro is like their highest tier brand. Now they used to have something called I'll just say formerly Toxic. They used to have the Toxic brand, but they rebranded to Nitro over the years. Or actually, no, I take that back. It used to be the Toxic, and then they came out with Nitro underneath Toxic, but then they eventually replaced Toxic with Nitro Plus. So the Nitro Plus used to be the Toxic. Then there's Nitro with no plus. And then there is Pure. Pure is weird because Pure was introduced like with RDNA 2. If you guys remember, the 6950 XT Pure was literally the world's best RDNA 2 card ever made. That was when they first introduced Pure, but Pure is it's been lowered one tier. It's like underneath Nitro now. And then they have Pulse. So these are the Sapphire brands from the highest to the lowest. We'll remove the Toxic thing. So anyway, so there's Sapphire. So if you're looking for the highest end Sapphire, Nitro Plus will have the most features. So Nitro Plus will have things like triple BIOS. You know, it'll have removable fans. It will have the chonkiest cooler. So it has the lowest noise. It has the highest cooling output. So that is Nitro Plus. If they're going to do liquid editions, that's usually also going to be a Nitro Plus variant. And then Nitro is going to be like a step down from that. But I haven't seen that many Nitro cards in recent history. It's usually become like Nitro Plus, Pure, and Pulse. They've kind of consolidated or simplified their offerings. If you want the white cards, available in white. So if you want the white card, you're going to get the Pure. Nitro is usually like a gunmetal gray. But yeah, Toxic cards are now Nitro cards. There was another brand that they used to have a number of years ago. So let's just say this was formerly the Toxic brand. Pure was known as the Tri-X brand. Or is that right? No. I think this is a relatively new brand. And then Pulse was formerly known as Tri-X. Or people would call it the Trix. The Tri-X brand. So they've rebranded a couple of times. The reason why I'm mentioning this is for those of you that may have purchased a Sapphire card a long time ago, you know, like a decade ago. So you probably were familiar with these names. But if you're looking at Sapphire today, you're probably like, well, you know, how do these line up? So from top to bottom, that's from premium down to the mainstream. So that's Sapphire. Then we have XFX. This is known as the Pine Group. That's the actual company. The parent company is the Pine Group. And then XFX used to make NVIDIA cards. But NVIDIA got mad at them one day and banned them. So now they're making AMD cards. So anyway, that's some history on XFX. So they have what do they call it? The magnetic air. Magnetic Air is the new one. I have to remember, like, what was the name of the other one? They had the Merc. The, man, what was that other one? It was like a weird, like, sickle or something. The XFX 7900 XTX. Speedster. Well, Speedster is like just the name of the Merc. Mercury, Magnetic Air. I don't know. They could do a better job. Merc is like the higher end one. But it's weird because they've got different variants. They've got like the Merc Magnetic Air, they've got the non-magnetic air. They have the Black Edition, which means it's factory overclocked. Yeah, I don't actually know. I'm actually kind of like out of the loop on XFX. If anyone knows more about XFX current branding than I do, feel free to chime in. Merc is very good, but I think there's also like there's Merc Magnetic Air, there's Merc Standard, there's the, man, what was the one that's like not Merc? I think Swift. Swift is another one. Yeah, Swift is the other one. That's right. So Swift is underneath Merc. And I think Speedster is also like Merc or Swift. It depends. Yeah, I know. We gotta close the stream out. The thing's coming out soon. So I feel like I'm playing like Night Rain and the blue is like closing in. It's like the blue is closing and we gotta get out of here soon. The blue is closing in, man. So like day 2 is almost over. We're going to the final boss. We're going to Monster Hunter. So anyway, these are the brands: Merc Magnetic Air, Merc Speedster. There's like another one. I forget. It's like they got. I think it's like these. I guess like they have probably another one. Anyway, XFX. That's XFX. Then there's Power Color. This is from the TUL group. So Power Color. Oh, and I guess Sapphire. Well, no, I don't know. Power Color. They have the Red Devil, formerly PCS Plus. If you're familiar with the older brands. Then you have the Hellhound. And then now there's a new one. The Reaper. I don't know. Okay, I don't know if Hellhound is supposed to be higher end than Reaper or if it's the other way around. Liquid Devil is like the highest. That's like just the liquid, man. That's just the liquid version of Red Devil. Power Color has the best names. Aren't they all associated with, like, demonic stuff, though? Like, Red Devil, Hellhound, Reaper. It's like all Halloween stuff. To me, it just sounds like it's a bunch of Halloween-themed graphics cards. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of like, it's definitely unique. I'll tell you that. It definitely stands out with names like Hellhound and Reaper and the Red Devil. Yeah, these guys should collaborate with Blizzard Entertainment for the Diablo series. Like, no joke. I don't understand why they haven't reached out to Blizzard over the years. So anyway, that's Power Color. And then who else do we got? Those are like the 3 big ones. So typically, if I'm buying an AMD card that's not an AMD reference card, it's usually one of these 3. So now there's a couple of legacy brands that are they're still around. So there's Vision Tech. There's Vision Tech. There's HIS Tech. I used to always say His High Tech. His High Tech or something. But HIS High Tech is another one. Diamond is another one. These are like these are the OGs of the Radeon family. So it's like, people are like, oh yeah, Diamond and HIS and Vision Tech. Like, these are the old school, man. This is going way back. These are like ATI This is ATI into the early days of the AMD ATI acquisition. I think, did BioStar make AMD cards? Vision Tech, HIS, Diamond. Is there anyone that I'm leaving out? These guys kind of fell off after like R9 Fury. And then it was like during the time of like Polaris, RX 480, RX 470. That was when you stopped hearing about them. I remember Vision Tech. Vision Tech still sold the BioStar. Okay, so BioStar isn't BioStar one of the newer ones though. I'm talking about the legacy brands. Legacy, we'll call them Legacy Radeon AIBs. These are companies. These aren't brands. These are the companies. These are like Sapphire and XFX. You know, but they kind of like, no one talks about them anymore. I think they're all still around though. I know Vision Tech is still around. I don't know about HIS and Diamond. They used to be so cool, man. These were like the cool brands. Radeon, back in the day, when Radeon was the good stuff, like when it was like neck and neck with Nvidia in terms of market share, you had so much choice. The consumers were the winners back in the day. You could get a Sapphire or an XFX or a Power Color or a Vision Tech or an HIS or a Diamond. So much choice. And then, of course, there are the ones that, what I call the mainstream people. You have your Asus, you have your Gigabyte, I mean, I don't know what to deal with MSI, but like MSI was kind of there. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe MSI needs to be added to Legacy. Maybe MSI needs to be added to Legacy. You had an XFX motherboard. XFX made motherboards? I've never heard of an XFX motherboard. Now, I've heard of an EVGA motherboard, and I've heard of a Sapphire motherboard. I've never heard of an XFX motherboard. That is insane, really. And I think MSI doesn't do Radeon cards anymore. Unfortunately for them, because when they cross them out, I crossed them out from my GeForce shortlist. So MSI is kind of dead to me now when it comes to GPUs. That includes GeForce. So that leaves Asus. Asus has Prime. Well, they got Tough and Prime. I don't know if Asus does Strix for AMD anymore. The NVIDIA GeForce Partner Program, I think, does not allow Asus to sell premium branded AMD Radeon anymore. And that might be why MSI stopped making Radeon cards. I don't really know. But I don't know what the deal is with MSI and the Radeon stuff. I think it has something to do with the GeForce Partner Program. Yeah, Asus cut out Strix because of NVIDIA. Yeah, it was because of the GeForce Partner Program. Once Kyle Bennett kind of like retired, or I don't know, pulled a Yoda and went into retirement / exile, whatever, I had a feeling that it would only be a matter of time before NVIDIA went and reared their ugly head again with that whole GeForce Partner Program. And I think that's why Asus doesn't do Strix for AMD. And I think that might be why MSI basically just kind of like stopped making AMD cards altogether. So, and then there's Gigabyte. But, you know, I don't know on that MSI thing, I don't know. So that I'm only speculating. Then there's Gigabyte. And Gigabyte does Aorus, Elite, and Gaming OC. These are the brands. The SLI boards back then looked like true high-end boards. Yeah, they had a lot of PCIe slots, that's for sure. So these I don't really consider that much anymore, but, you know, it's not like they're bad. It's just like I would rather get one of these. I think these are better. Because the way I look at it, I feel like I don't think Asus is that bad at doing this, although I don't really know. Gigabyte definitely does not favor Radeon at all. Like, Gigabyte has a history of giving Radeon, like, the leftover coolers. So I personally don't buy Gigabyte at all for graphics cards. That, combined with the fact that a lot of people have complained about Gigabyte graphics cards over time. So that's another reason why. So I don't really buy Gigabyte GPUs at all, regardless of whether we're talking AMD or Nvidia. So they're just, in my opinion, now this is not like, I'm not saying like don't buy Gigabyte. I'm just saying I personally will not buy Gigabyte graphics cards. I'll buy Gigabyte motherboards, but we're not buying Gigabyte graphics cards. So don't expect to see a Gigabyte GPU on this channel unless Gigabyte wants me to do a review and they send me a review sample. So when it comes to me spending my own money on a GPU, we're not buying any of those. So, but you know, Gigabyte can send me a review sample, and if I have to send it back, I'll do the review, and maybe they'll change my opinion of them. So Asus, same deal. Don't really buy their GPUs. I bought one GPU from Asus years ago. It had artifacting with a VRAM. I had to mod the card to fix that. There's a whole video on the channel on how I did that. Yeah. Typically, I don't buy Asus or Gigabyte at all. So for GPUs. But motherboards, there's nothing wrong with the motherboards. Okay, so now the last one. ASRock. ASRock came in... ASRock, I think... I'm trying to remember when ASRock started selling AMD cards. Because it's not... It's not like recent, but it is kind of recent. Does anyone remember, like, did ASRock have a 6000 series? Was it 6000 series? Was ASRock RDNA 2? Was that their first? Hold on. ASRock. I think it was RDNA 2. So that would have been like 2020. So ASRock has Tai Chi. And they have, do they have RDNA 1? ASRock 5700 XT? Oh, they did. They were doing RDNA 1. There is such a thing as a 5700 XT Challenger. So they have Tai Chi. They have Phantom Gaming. They have Challenger. Yeah, I don't know if they do formula anymore. Aqua is like the liquid cooled. A lot of people have had problems with Gigabyte GPUs. All I know is, at first I didn't believe the people online complaining about their Gigabyte GPU problems. Then one day, I went to Micro Center, and I was waiting in line for the checkout. And then, you know, so at Micro Center, if you guys have never been to Micro Center, you're not familiar with how it works. But the way it works is at checkout. So let me tell you like a little story about Micro Center. So Micro Center, you have your... Imagine if we're like looking down at, like, we're on the ceiling looking down at the store. So you have the checkout cashier stations. So think of it like you got these registers. So you have the, you know, you have the attendant, you have the sales, or not the salesperson, but you have like the, you know, the people who you pay when you buy the stuff at the checkout. So the registers. So I was in line, the cashiers, thank you. Why couldn't I say the cashiers? So the cashiers. So here's me waiting in line to check out. So there's a person that works there at the store who like tells you which register is open for you to go to. So imagine there's like more registers. So I'm waiting in line. So I ask the Micro Center employee. I just straight up asked him, which brand of GPUs do you guys get the most returns? I asked him that. And guess what he told me? Guess what he said? Which brand do you think he mentioned? Let's see if the chat knows. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Gigabyte. Oh boy, Gigabyte. It's always Gigabyte. Always Gigabyte. He was like, dude, it's Gigabyte, man. He's like, we get so many returns of Gigabyte in like a month, in like every month. And I was like, well, okay, that's not good to know, because at first I didn't believe what the people online were saying. I thought people were just hating on Gigabyte. Like, you know, they were just discriminating against Gigabyte because they don't like Gigabyte for whatever reason. So then I go to the store and I ask the actual people who deal with the returns. And they tell me Gigabyte. So it's like, okay, well, that pretty much proves it. So that's one of the reasons why we don't actually buy these. So, because they do, their cards look good. The Elite, the Master, they look really nice. But if there's a lot of issues and, you know, you have downtime, having to deal with an RMA, or you have to return to the store and get another one, you're like, who wants to waste their time doing that? Who wants to deal with an RMA? Who wants to deal with support? Who wants to deal with going to the store and returning it, especially if you don't live near a Micro Center? So you see what I'm saying? So it's like, no. No. So that's why we don't buy Gigabyte. ASRock, so I have one ASRock graphics card. And I did a review on it, and it's pretty good. I don't have any problems with it. It's not a high-end graphics card. It's a RX 7600 that I did a review on back in May of 2023, whenever that GPU came out. Still have it. It's still good. I never had any problems. I mean, now granted, I've only had one ASRock GPU, and it's a relatively entry-level GPU. It's fine. Oh, Marcelo was saying ASRock has been around since the RX 500 days. Okay, so they have been around longer than I thought. ASRock RX 580. Yeah, okay. That's right, because that was around the time of the GPP, the GeForce Partner Program. Because I remember ASRock was getting into the market when NVIDIA started trying to get the brands that manufacture both Radeon and GeForce to favor GeForce with their premium brands. Yeah, that makes sense. That was around the RX 580 series, yeah. Yeah, I have had to deal with... Have I dealt with ASRock? So, okay, here's what I can tell you about the support. I've never had any problem with Sapphire. Actually, hold on. Have I? Okay. I thought I had a problem with a AMD reference card. It was an RX Vega 64. I thought there was a problem with it, and it was a Sapphire. Like, I purchased it from Sapphire, meaning it was like, you know, it's an AMD reference card, but Sapphire, it's Sapphire packaging. It's the same way I bought my reference 700 XTX. So I opened a case of Sapphire, and they were willing to do the RMA like from the start, but I started troubleshooting and I realized the problem is actually not the GPU. The problem is my power supply trips OCP way too easily. So that was the whole thing about the 1000 watt Seasonic that can't handle a Vega 64's power spikes or a 3090 Ti power spikes. So yeah, that power supply was the culprit. So I told Sapphire, I was like, hey, yeah, you know what? Never mind. Never mind. It's not the GPU. Problem solved. Sorry. Close the ticket. So I've dealt with Sapphire support once, and I never had to go to the RMA process. So, and they were totally ready to do the RMA, you know, whatever. They were open to do the RMA. This was back in like 2017, 2018. So I don't know how it is today, but they get a 100% pass in terms of support. XFX, I can't comment. I've never dealt with their support, although I do have XFX graphics cards. I have the following XFX graphics cards. So XFX, I have a 7870. I have a 7850. Is that right? Yes, I think so. 7870, 7850, RX 480 reference, purchased with their branding. And then I have a 7600 XT from the... Oh, and I have a 6700. Yeah, so I do have quite a few XFX cards. None of them are like super high end or anything. Like for the time, this was like the highest end XFX card that I've ever owned, and even then, this is like a upper mid range card. This would be like a 5070 Ti in today's world, in terms of what you would compare it to. So these are my XFX cards. Never had a single problem with any of them. Never had to open a support ticket with them, so I have no idea how XFX support is. So I got to give them a pass because I have only had good GPUs from them. Power Color, I have had to do an RMA with Power Color. It was my R9 290X PCS Plus. It suffered from the dreaded black screen issues on R9 290X due to Elpida defective VRAM. So those of you who have been in the industry for a while, you guys recognize Elpida. We don't talk about Elpida anymore because now it's either Hynix, Samsung, or Micron. But Elpida used to be another memory manufacturer. I think they were actually a Japanese company, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what happened to them. But there was this severe problem with VRAM. I think this was GDDR5 or GDDR3, whatever the 290X had. So mine suffered from the black screen issue due to defective VRAM. So I had to do an RMA. There was nothing that Power Color could do about it except do the RMA. And I did the RMA, no problems. So Power Color gets a complete pass in my book. It was very easy. At the time, there was a guy who worked there. His name was Raymond. Raymond was like the Power Color guy. Like, you would find him on the Reddit post, on the support forums. You could just email him directly, and he would just help open the ticket and get things going. So Power Color, I don't know how it is today, but Power Color back in the day, back in like 10 years ago, was like really good support, like super good. So yeah, Power Color, solid. XFX, I can't comment because I've never dealt with them. Sapphire, also really good. Elpida seems Elpida became Micron Memory Japan. Oh, okay. So they got acquired by Micron. Oh, okay, so they're still around then. So that means Micron is... Okay. That's good to know. XFX is a good choice, yes. I would say so. Especially the magnetic air. So, the others. Asus, I have dealt with them, not for GPU problems. I have dealt with them for motherboard things, but it never ended up being an RMA. It was always like me reporting an issue, like a BIOS bug, and they would always accept it, and they would always look into it. So for me, I've had positive experience with Asus. So, but I've never had to deal with an RMA through Asus, so I can't really say yay or nay on Asus. Gigabyte, no. ASRock, yes, but it's kind of hard to get a hold of them, from what I understand. So I had a friend who purchased a 7900 XTX Tai Chi, and one day, out of the blue, it just straight up, like, died. He claims he wasn't messing with it in terms of overclocking, but, you know, I don't know. You know, he's claiming that he didn't overclock it, but he's like, yeah, it's just, like, it doesn't work anymore. So, he did an RMA with ASRock. He didn't have any problems. To my knowledge, it worked. It was just really hard for him to get a hold of them. But once he got a hold of them, things got rolling, and they fulfilled the RMA. So I would say ASRock, yes. It's just a little bit hard to get a hold of them. That was what I heard from him. So it's like, I don't know. Gigabyte support is actually pretty good, guys. They are willing to work with you to try to troubleshoot the problem. So to give them the benefit of the doubt, yeah. Their support is good, but their products, their GPUs, not so much from what I've heard. Now, I've never owned a GPU from Gigabyte, so I can't really say no to them, but I've heard so many negative things about their GPUs that I just don't really feel like recommending them. But their support is okay. Their support passes. If we're grading them on support, then they're fine. You've seen Asus pushing too much power. You've only ever had Sapphire. All of them lasted years. Yeah, this is the reason why Sapphire equals the Toyota brand. I call them Toyota. Sapphire, in my mind, is the Toyota brand of graphics cards. Like, if people don't know what I mean by that, basically that means that they have good quality. They have good quality. I've never had to RMA a Sapphire. All their cards are rock solid. My very first graphics card is a Sapphire. It still works today. There's probably no drivers for it, but it still works. It is the Toyota brand of the graphics cards. So if you want an AMD card that just straight up works, there's no issues. Sapphire they even introduced their own like upscaler software in the Tricks app that they had. And this was years ago. This was before DLSS, before FSR. They had their own dynamic resolution scaling app. So, and they had their own stuff like way out before anyone else. Sapphire was the first to invent the flow through design on GPU coolers, not NVIDIA. So if you're ever on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and the question comes out, which of the following companies was the first to market with the GPU flow-through design? And the answer choices are A, Asus, B, NVIDIA, C, Sapphire, or D, Intel. If you're ever on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and this question comes up, oh, why is this thing blocking the path? If the question comes up, who was the first to invent the flow-through design on GPU coolers? And you're trying to win $1 million and you say NVIDIA, you lost. That's wrong. Actually, the correct answer is C, Sapphire Technologies. So that's a little bit of tech nerd trivia there. They invented that cooler on the Tri-X R9 Fury back in 2015. 2015. R9 Fury. I still have it in my collection. That was no, it wasn't a 5700 XT, unless you're talking about something else. Oh, you had a Sapphire 5700 XT. The fan control kind of died in it, and then the fans would fail the Sapphire fan check test. the fan control, so it can't be controlled at all. I think most of my GPUs are actually Sapphire that are not like reference cards. Didn't Sapphire have the magnetic fans for RDNA 1? No, they didn't have magnetic. They had the ones with a screw. You had a single screw that you could remove. They weren't magnetic. I think XFX, I think one of them, I think XFX was the one that was always doing the magnetic one. But I think they both had like the removable, like there was a single screw. I think. I know Sapphire had the screw design. They didn't do magnetic. XFX still does magnetic, hence why we literally listed magnetic air. Yeah, so these are basically my top 3. So if I'm going to be... So here's where I'm going with this. If AMD... If it's true that if AMD is not going to sell a reference card, because if I was going to choose one, I'd just get the AMD reference card at the end of the day and call it, you know, that's it. That's it. All I got to do is get the reference card. If I can't buy an AMD reference card, then the top 3 choices for me, number 1, first choice is going to be Sapphire. Number 2, XFX. Number 3, Power Color. Number 4, ASRock. Number 5, Asus. Number 6, unless these guys are still around, it's going to be Gigabyte as the last choice. So that is how I will be shopping for a 9070 XT. We will prioritize Sapphire first. If I can't get them at launch, we'll move on to XFX and try to get that magnetic air. If I can't get them... Okay, so what I can tell you guys... Also, here's a little bit more, like, I guess, metrics or statistics. Although it's only, like, a few individuals. So what I can tell you is I know someone who has a 7900 XTX. He had to do an RMA, but it's been rock solid. I have another friend who has a Merc Magnetic Air 7900 XTX. That thing is super quiet and flawless. So, that individual is very happy with the Magnetic Air. So, that one. And then I myself, I am using the Nitro in the PC right now. Like we were showing it off earlier. So you guys can see the white LED bar. That is the Nitro. I have it on white, but that is the Nitro. There's that 888 pin. So that is what we are using to encode the live stream right now. So, no problems. No problems. This one had an RMA, but so far the replacement one has worked fine. I'm trying to think, like, I know someone else who has a Sapphire Nitro 6900 XT. So not a 7000 series, but a 6000 series. And they have had that thing since, like, Black Friday of 2022. So right before the 7900 XTX came out. They didn't wait. They went and took advantage of those really good deals on Black Friday for the 6900 XT. And they've been very happy with that one. I know someone else who has a... I forget... Oh, a Sapphire... Is it Sapphire? No, it's ASRock. ASRock Phantom Gaming 6800 XT has been using that thing super hardcore, running that thing like a workhorse day in, day out. And that thing, he got it in the same exact time. So end of 2022, right before RDNA 3 launched. Been 100% satisfied with it. No problems. And those are what I call 5-year GPUs. Those 3080, those 6800 XTs, those are like 5-year GPUs. So those things, they don't use too much power, so you can run them like hardcore, and they just go. They're just really good. So like I said, Sapphire, man, those things are basically Toyota. Those, they don't die. They're like super good. So yeah. So the whole point of me mentioning all this is for people who are not familiar with Radeon cards and are thinking of getting a 9070 XT. This is kind of like, I guess, veteran industry knowledge of the brands. So you guys have a better, so you guys are in a better position to make an informed buying decision if you're considering getting a 9070 XT or a 9070 when they launch literally in a week from now, which is very interesting. So, yeah, that's going to be the priority list for me. Sapphire first, XFX second, Power Color third, and then I guess ASRock, and then Asus. Or maybe Asus over ASRock. It really, like, ASRock and Asus in my mind are kind of similar. It's just, I don't like buying a GPU from a company that, like, doesn't offer the more premium brands because of NVIDIA. So maybe that's my way of punishing them, but that doesn't help because it only makes them feel more inclined to sell NVIDIA instead of the Radeon equivalents. So it's kind of a weird spot for Asus and Gigabyte, to be honest. Just they're so dependent on what NVIDIA tells them to do. Because NVIDIA is the vast majority of their sales figures for their GPU division. Liquid Devil is the Red Devil with an AIO. You had 4090 Asus tough. You rode that thing really hard without issue. Yeah, but we're talking about people who are using these things in, let's just say, not the best environments. They do not have the best airflow on the case. The builds do not have RGB. The computer sits on a carpeted floor under a desk with very poor airflow. So if you're running your 4090 in that kind of environment, yeah, I don't know. Poor ventilation, dust from the carpet, that kind of stuff. Those are the sort of people that are using the cards that I just described. So, that's why, if I know the person and I know how they live and they're asking me to recommend them a GPU, I typically tell them to get a Sapphire. And this is the reason why I'm telling them to get a Sapphire, because I know that the Sapphire can tolerate that kind of abuse. Hence the reason why I refer to it as the Toyota of graphics cards. Anyway, but this was an interesting conversation on the GPU. We need to move on here because we're rapidly running out of time. Let's go back here. So this is great news because it literally means a week from now, these GPUs will be available. I was not expecting it to be this soon. But based off of this announcement in China, it looks like it's coming real soon. So, wow, that's going to be before. This means that I'm going to be looking for one of these before I buy a 9950X3D. That might, I don't know. I might not have enough. I might not have enough money to buy both in the same month. So, we'll have to look and see. I really want that 9950X3D. And I expect the 9950X3D is going to be like $700. So that's an expensive CPU. So maybe I'm overthinking the scalpers. The scalpers might not immediately gobble up 9950X3D just because it's more cost prohibitive than, and I guess less lucrative than trying to flip GPUs. So I don't know. Maybe it's not a big deal. Let's talk quickly here about the NVIDIA RTX 50. Well, okay, we're not going to spend too much time on this. I think at this point in time, it's clear to me that the 50 series is a complete flop in one of the worst ways possible. So first, there was the 5090 melting connectors. Then there was the 5090 black screen PCIe Gen 5 issues. Then there was the 50 series driver black screen issues. Then there was the missing ROPs on 5090 and 5080. And now the 5070 Ti. So, like, this is one of the stupidest things. I have never heard of this ever happening. Because how would they not know? Like, they cannot just have the GPU ship with less than what's in the specs. Like, this is so bad. Like, this is one of those things where it's like someone's gonna spend, you know, $1,000. They're gonna overpay on this, and if they're completely ignorant to the problems that could possibly exist, they're never gonna notice that they have a problem until their tech enthusiast friend tells them to fire up GPU Z. And lo and behold, they're missing ROPs. Then they got to go deal with an RMA. So this is kind of a nightmare situation to be in. The fact that this is supposed to have 96 ROPs. Some of them are shipping with only 88 ROPs. Like, how does NVIDIA fail this bad with this launch? But, you know, like what Steve was saying in his video, the Gamers Nexus video, this is like the best opportunity for AMD. There's only two windows of opportunity that can come, and they're very, very rare. One of them is extremely rare. The rare opportunity is when your competitor fails. And NVIDIA does not fail very often. But here, in my mind, NVIDIA has clearly failed. The 50 series is plagued with so much negative media news and so many problems that it's so bad. It's just so bad that I don't recommend it at all. I don't recommend any of these 50 series cards right now. Like, if someone was on a 4090 and they asked me if they want to upgrade to a 5090, I'd tell them don't upgrade. Don't upgrade. Do you really want to add all that maintenance of having to check your cables and current clamps and, you know, all this kind of stuff, and always having to have that anxiety in the back of your head because the GPU pulls 575 watts? Now, one interesting thing about 5090 doesn't pull 500 watts unless you're gaming at 4K. I think if you're gaming at 1440p, it doesn't actually do that. I heard it's more like 300 to 400 watts or 400 something watts at 1440p. So, I mean, I guess if someone wastes like $3,000 to game at like a puny 1440p, it's like I want to be some kind of loser like that. I guess it's okay, but I mean, who would do that? To me, that just sounds so dumb. So anyway, the whole thing is just terrible. It's just like such a pathetic thing to talk about. So this is the reason why I feel so burned out talking about GPUs, because we've literally talked about 50 series for like 2 months straight, it feels like. And it's like they finally launched last month, and then it was just bad news week after week. It's like every single Tech Thursdays, there was some new thing. First there was a melted connector. Oh, there's more than one. Oh, there's the PCIe Gen 5. The ribbon cable on the Founders Edition. Oh, wait, now there's driver black screen issues. Oh, now there's missing ROMs. It's like every single week there's something new that's a negative thing to talk about, a negative headline. So, on the flip side, apparently, the RTX 5070, which launches next month, is up to, there's those quote words, up to 20% faster than RTX 4070. So this is up to 20% faster than 4070. Oh yeah, they dropped the PhysX support. Yes. But I feel like that is one of the least concerning things, because it's not a quality issue. It's like a executive decision to screw over gamers. It's like, I don't know, like with 50 series cards, just screw them over even more. Yeah, I don't know. Like, the first performance benchmarks have leaked out. It offers an uplift of close to 15% over its predecessor. So here are the scores. It was tested with a 9800X3D to remove the CPU bottleneck. And there we go. There it is. So it outperforms a 4070 Super, and it is right under a 4070 Ti. So again, this is another example of how underwhelming this generation is, this 50 series generation. However, on the bright side, I guess if you have a 5070, you don't have to worry about the 12-volt power cable, because my understanding is that NVIDIA is not requiring the 12-volt power cable on the 5070, meaning AIB partners are allowed to use the 8-pin. So I guess that's like the one positive thing about the entire 50 series cards. But if they're not going to mandate it for 5070, why can they not mandate it for like all of the 50 series cards? Like, I don't understand that. The logic doesn't make any sense. It just sounds so stupid. The more you drill into the 50 series, the more you uncover like how bad the entire generation is. And it's just, I don't know, like, Blackwell is just Ada Lovelace with GDDR7. And the 5090 is just a 4090 with full 96 megabytes of L2. Yeah. Yeah. Golden opportunity for AMD. And you know what's really sad for AMD? NVIDIA literally is laying out the red carpet for their competitor. It's like, hey guys, we're going on vacation for the next 2 years. So we're going to put this garbage out there in the ocean for everyone to just scoop up all these sloppy 50 series. So you guys, you handle it. Peace out. I'm going on vacation for 2 years. You do whatever you want. That's basically what NVIDIA is doing. The sad thing is this is like a chance where if AMD had a full product stack, meaning they had a 5090 competitor, they could literally they could scoop up a lot of the discrete desktop market from the gamer's perspective. Not so much the professional space, because like CUDA is still like a thing. But man, this is like the golden opportunity, and their top GPU is straight up MIA. It's so sad. It's so sad. Like, they're doing B team launch when NVIDIA is floundering. It's so sad. They're going B team. Everyone knows what B team is. B team is the team at AMD that brought us the Polaris RX 480. They're also the team that brought us the RX 5700 XT. And they're now bringing us the 9070 XT and the 9070. So they're the ones who do the cards that are like really, really good value. And they turn the market share around in favor of AMD. But they don't have like the super high-end Halo tier product. So, oh man, it just so happens that it lines up that way. It's like NVIDIA fails, and then you have like the team that brings in the cards that don't have like the super enthusiast performance tiers. So, it's such a feels bad. Have you seen the news about China made 48 gigabyte 49? Yeah, I remember where they were soldering on the, yeah. If you look at OC results, it pretty much has same. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the 9070 XT performs at 4K, though. Because there was some leaks about that. Okay, what's this? Retail prices for 5070 Ti go crazy. Custom models now listed for $2,000 plus. How recent is this article? This article sounds like it's fake. Oh, this article was almost a week ago. This is a scalper. I mean, this isn't even news. Like, wait, Asus visit the store? Is that actually shipped by Asus? It's probably not. Yeah, this isn't even, like, this is a scalper, guys. Like, this is a stupid article. Dispatches from Branecker, like, that's not even, no. All right, I guess, okay, in other news, just real quick, PSVR 2 has permanently reduced the price to $399. This is actually a pretty good VR headset for PC. I actually use, this is my main VR headset for PC currently. So, it's pretty good if you're okay with the wired and the OLED lens. It doesn't have the pancake lens like on the Quest 3. The Meta Quest 3, I think, still has a better, like, field of view. But this thing has better colors. So, but it's wired. So it's like wired versus wireless. But the nice thing about wired is it has the lowest latency. And it's also not doing image compression, which is what you have to do on the wireless VR headsets. So I think this is a good value considering the specs, considering what you're getting. You're getting an OLED. So its response time is really, really good, like all OLEDs. It has really good tracking. I personally use this. I used to use an old Oculus Rift. I still have the Oculus Rift. This thing is a lot better than the Oculus Rift. Now, this is not going to compete with like a Pimax or those super high-end 8K VR headsets, but it's not meant to do that, hence the price point. But I'll say this, like if you're someone who is kind of like on the fence about VR, but you're kind of interested in it, I feel like this is a good starting point, and the amount of money spent on the headset is not a whole lot compared to like how much it costs to get those super high-end ones. And the other thing too is the PlayStation one has really good drivers. A lot of those third-party like Pimax, those other guys, getting those to work with things like flight simulators and racing simulators, it can be very tricky depending on the brand. The PlayStation one, it just straight up works. So this thing integrates fully into the Steam VR library. So all of your Steam VR games work with the PlayStation VR 2. So it's really, really good. The only thing is it's got the wire. So if you don't like the tether cable, then it's not going to be a good choice. But if you're okay with the cable, it is actually a really good choice. So, this is currently my primary VR headset. It's really the only one that I actually use. And I'm not super into VR, but this is the one that I currently use. So I can vouch for this as being a pretty decent headset. And if you have an NVIDIA card if you have any GPU that is an AIB card or it's an NVIDIA card, you have to buy this $60 adapter that adapts the USB-C. It takes DisplayPort and adapts it to USB-C. But if you have either an RDNA 2 or RDNA 3 reference AMD card or any AMD card that has a USB-C on it, you can literally plug the adapter, or not the adapter. You can literally plug the VR headset directly into the Radeon card, install Sony's VR driver app, and you're good to go, and it straight up works. I have an entire video on the channel showing how to set that up. So, if you're curious on how that works, if you have one of those cards, it does not work with 20 series NVIDIA reference cards. It does not work with those. It only works with the Radeon cards that have USB-C. I don't know why it doesn't work with the NVIDIA 20 series reference. USB-C, it does not. Digital Foundry, Rich already confirmed it does not work. But then when he tested it, I guess he watched my video or something, but he said he switched it over to his 69 or his 7900 XTX, his AMD reference card, and it just straight up worked. And for me, it just straight up worked. So, yeah, I don't know what the difference is, but anyway. So that one is one thing worth mentioning. And then Biwin launches first DDR5 RGB memory kit with dual EXPO profiles. So this can either run in DDR5-8000 CL34, or it can run 6400 CL28. Now, one of the things that unfortunately we don't have enough time to talk about, which I wanted to talk about, there were some people that were reporting issues with ASRock motherboards killing CPUs. I don't know how true that is or how accurate that is. What I will say is back in 2023, when that was happening, for the short duration that was happening, it was happening because people were running VSOC voltages way above 1.2 volts. They were running like 1.3 something volts, and that was going to burn out the CPU. That burns out the fabric. So if you want to run DDR5-8000, you need to set your VSOC to 1.1 volt. If you want to run 6400 CL28, this is going to be really hard to do without winning the silicon lottery. So the reality is with 6400, you either need to set your ratio to run 1 to 2 mode, just like with 8000, and then you're going to run your F clock at 2133. So let's go ahead and, here, let me clean all this up. That didn't work. So here is, now I don't know what is actually causing those CPUs to fail, but what I will tell people, DDR5-8000 requires VSOC equal 1.1 volt. 1.1 volt. The F clock equals 2000 megahertz. U clock equals 2000 megahertz. M clock equals 4000 megahertz. This is irrespective of whatever the cast latency is. The other profile, DDR5 6400. So this is the one that, okay, if it so happens that these CPUs are dying, the first thing that I would ask the user, what is the memory speed that they're running and what is the VSOC voltage that they're running? Because I have a theory that VSOC should not be above 1.2 volts. This is what I would consider the maximum. Now, currently, the maximum is 1.3. I don't think 1.3 is safe for the longevity of the CPU. So I will never run my VSOC at 1.3 volts. I don't think that's good. I think at some point you're going to have degradation start happening. So 1.2 is the max. So here's the thing. If you win the silicon lottery and you can do this and this, if you can do this and it's actually stable, then you can do this. If you cannot do this because you need to push VSOC to like 1.29 or 1.3 volt, I'm just going to tell you straight up, that's not a good idea. If you want to keep your CPU for more than 2 years, you probably do not want to run 1.3 volts. So, if you cannot, so let's put it this way. If you need more than 1.2 on VSOC to run this speed, it's not worth doing it. So what I would do, here's what I would do. This is what I would do. I would do VSOC equals 1.1, FCLK equals 2133, because here's the other thing that a lot of people don't know. F-clock doesn't like high voltage. The high VSOC is going to introduce instability with the F-clock. In fact, it's also going to cause high idle power consumption. And that is the reason why people are like, oh, well, Ryzen has high power consumption. Well, the only people that are experiencing that are the people running like, 1.25, 1.3 volts. Those people are going to have high idle power consumption. But people like me who run 1.1 are never going to have high idle power consumption because we're running it significantly lower. But here's the trick. U clock needs to be 1600, and then M clock equals 3200. This works. That works. And the difference between this versus something like, because I'm going to use my own CPU as an example. Why is this so much space apart? Anyway, my own CPU can do this. The 9950X that I have can do this. So I can do this. I can run that. Mine will run all day long. But you know what I don't like? I don't like this. That is a no-no for a daily driver setup. So I actually run this because this is better. And the difference for longevity, and the difference between these two, for those that were curious, the difference is going to be 1 to 2%. Meaning, by me dropping U clock to half of the M clock, I'm literally only losing 1%. 1 to 2%. And you know what you can do when you do this? Guess what? This setup has more OC headroom for curve optimizer and curve shaper and PBO. So by me sacrificing the, let's say, 2% performance from running in Gear 1 mode, I gain more headroom with my overclock. And the reason why that is true is because when you run a high VSOC, this eats into the power budget for the entire CPU. Which means if someone's struggling to get that 6400 to run in 1-to-1, they're going to hurt the overclocking headroom of the CPU. So it's like, take your pick. You either have lower overclocking capability in your CPU with higher idle power consumption, with the possibility of damaging your CPU or having it age prematurely. So it's like, do you want that? Or do you want lower idle power consumption with more overclocking headroom by sacrificing 1 to 2% in terms of your memory performance? So this is the obvious choice for me. This is exactly how I have my godlike setup right now. So we are running, that's not the right one. Where's the camera? Here it is. This is running that. 1.1 volt VSOC, F clock 2133. And people are probably like, well, why is F clock 2133? Because that is 1/3 of 6400. So we get a latency reduction by running the fabric at 2133, at 1/3 of your 6400. Now, it's not going to be as beneficial as this. This shaves off like 3 to 5 nanoseconds of latency. This one. F clock equals U clock. When these two are synchronized, you reduce your memory latency by up to 5 nanoseconds. That is huge. That is huge. And then what also reduces it further is TREFI equals 49,920. So this combined with this, combined with low idle power consumption, this is the reason why I'm a huge advocate for DDR5-8000. You get so many plus. There's just too much plus with DDR5-8000 on Ryzen. You get low energy consumption. You get low latency. You can run TREFI up to 50,000, no problem. So this is the reason why this is kind of like the most enthusiast setup, but this maxes out at 48 gigabytes. 2 sticks. 2x24. So this is the ideal setup. But not everybody can do this because this is very dependent on the actual motherboard. This setup depends on the motherboard. So if you have a lower end motherboard, or not enough layers, whatever, it's not really going to be an easy option. But it is this is the most premium setup, let's say. The most ideal. But for those of you that are trying to do this, I think this is overrated. Personally, this is way overrated. It's hard to do because it's so silicon lottery. This is so dependent on winning the silicon lottery. My personal 9950X can do this at 1.27 volts. And that is not a good voltage for long term. So I choose not to run that. Instead, I opt for this because I still get my 1/3 latency. This reduces latency by like 2 milliseconds, or not milliseconds, 2 nanoseconds in memory latency by running F clock at 2133, which is 1/3 the speed of DDR5-6400. By running the U clock really, really low, like at half, I can run 1.1 100% stable all day. This does not interfere with the fabric, so the fabric runs 100% stable at this higher speed. So that's basically the best choice. So for me, what I think needs to happen to rule out like people's CPUs dying due to too high of a VSOC, they need to... So the motherboard BIOS updates need to make it so that as soon as someone tries to load an EXPO or XMP that does 6400, the BIOS manufacturer needs to force the auto voltage to 1.1 and force gear 2, 1-2 ratio. And then, meaning if the user doesn't know what they're doing, but they know how to load an XMP profile, they can go in and do that, and the BIOS will safely set a lower voltage and will safely set a very easy, stable system that's not going to have to be tested for stability. Because this just straight up works. So Do DDR5 10,000 kits work on AMD? That is very dependent on the motherboard. So it really depends on the motherboard. It is possible that they work on a 2 DIMM Gigabyte Aorus Tachyon or an Asus X670 or Gene or one of those boards that have only 2 sticks. So somebody overclocked to like 10,000 on Ryzen. It was on like an 8700G last year. But I don't know how practical it is to run at that speed, because at 10,000 you have to run the memory so loose that it doesn't really, it gives you more memory bandwidth, but because of the latency, because the timings are so loose, I don't know how beneficial 10,000 plus is on any system, really. That's the other reason why I don't see the value in QDIM. Because all the QDIM, I was thinking of getting QDIM kits to test with Arrow Lake and to test the bypass mode on the Godlike. But I looked at them, and to me, it was not impressive. Because currently, like, QDIM is, it's like, what, 8,800 or like 9,000 plus. But it's like a stupid 1.45 volts, which means you have to have active cooling. This is going to run too hot on the RAM, so you're going to be unstable. Even with the redriver, it's going to be running like 55, 65 degrees Celsius when you're gaming. So to me, this is so impractical, and it doesn't give me high density. So like, I won't consider QDIM until I can see like QDIM with, like 4 times 64 or 4 times, well, technically you can buy like 2 48 gig kits today and try 4 sticks. Really, what I want to see from QDIM, I want to see lower voltages and higher density. Until I see lower voltages and higher density, this is a complete skip. Like, it is pointless. And I've looked at some of the tests that people have done with Arrow Lake. The latency is so bad. We're talking like 90 plus nanoseconds of latency with QDIM. It's straight up not even worth it. Like, there's like no advantage right now. So the bottom line is QDIM is cool. It is a future technology, but it is so early days right now that it's not impressive at all. So this is like when DDR5 first came out and high-end DDR4 was like outperforming DDR5. That is basically what QDIM is right now. So I would not really pay attention to it until we see higher density, lower voltage. It basically has to mature. Yeah, 20 minutes till Monster Hunter. Yeah, so we need to end this soon here. So yeah, so I don't recommend this. This is totally fine. It's not going to perform as good as the DDR5-8000 because DDR5-8000 is just way too good. Like, you're getting like -5 nanosecond latency by doing this, and then you're also getting the high 4 gigahertz on the memory. And everyone knows the biggest bottleneck in this system is the memory. Memory is the #1 bottleneck. #2 bottleneck is typically going to be the fabric, but not really. It just really kind of depends. U-clock, believe it or not, is really not the bottleneck oftentimes. It's like you can push U-clock really, really high. This is the reason why like people who are like, oh, it needs to be 1.1. Those people don't actually know what they're talking about, because yes, you get better performance, but it's so impractical that it's like, like the voltage is so bad. Show me the Zen timings. Okay. Let's bring up Zen timings. Yeah, this is a good, okay. Where is it? There, bam. Check it out. There we go. Right above me, U clock 1600, F clock 2133, M clock 3200, 4 sticks of memory, 96 gigabytes, 6400, and The other one, the key number here, TREFI, the magic 49920. The reason why you do 49920 is because you don't want to kill your RAM. You don't want to burn up your RAM. The people who keep saying 65, max it out, 65, blah, blah, blah. Those people, I hope their memory has really good cooling, or you're not running more than 1.35 volts, because we're running, check it out, 1.1 volt. 1.1 volt. You know what that means? This CPU is going to have a very, very long lifespan. And then look, memory voltage 1.35, not 1.4, not 1.45, no, 1.35 with this and F clock 2133. And these are the, you know, the whatever. But the one that really cuts the latency is this. This is the magic. This is the secret. You want to cut latency? This cuts latency and increases the memory bandwidth better than messing with the CL. So number one, run this really high. Who cares about CL? CL, you're going to have to up your voltage way, way, way too high. So it isn't even worth it. Because, you know what? I like my RAM to last me like the full lifetime of the socket. And I want my CPU to not die. So that would be good. So these are my settings. And this is for 4 sticks. 4 sticks. TREFI at 65535. The RAM's gonna run really hot. The RAM's gonna run hot. So if you're okay with running like 50 Celsius or whatever at idle, that you turn on your gaming and then you're like closing in on 60 Celsius, that's going to potentially cause instability because DDR5 doesn't like high temps. You want to stay as close to like 45C as possible.
T-minus 15 minutes.
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, so we covered pretty much all the stuff. Let me just look real quick here. Oh, I did want to talk about the Thermal Grizzly thing. So this is really cool. Hold on, get this out of the way. This is really cool. So Thermal Grizzly is offering a service where you can literally buy a pre-delidded Ryzen 9800X 3D. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to risk damaging your expensive gaming champion CPU, you can just buy one from Thermal Grizzly. And it comes with a full 2-year warranty. So it's like, that's pretty cool, to be honest. Like, this is actually a really innovative thing. They will send you the full, like, original packaging. So it's like, if you buy it, you will get the original Ryzen box. You will get the Ryzen sticker, the manual. They'll send you not only the delidded CPU, they'll also send you the IHS. So you can have that as well. And they'll put all of that in a box. They also include a test protocol result here. So you have an idea of what the temperatures should be under Cinebench load while stress testing. That way you know if your mounting pressure is good or not. So really, really interesting thing. I really like what Derbauer is doing. They also include a USB stick with the screenshots of the test and a picture of the physical processor of how it looks after they did the delid. So, and they did all the testing. As kind of the proof of how it's supposed to be from when they shipped it. You have to use, I think you have to use the contact frame, and so that it allows you to do the correct mounting pressure. But yeah, I've never done delidding CPU mounts before, so I don't know like how you actually mount these, because I would imagine you cannot use a standard mounting. The Z height from the cooler is going to be different because this is lower than the IHS. So I'm not exactly sure how they get the tolerances for the measurements for how you mount the coolers to these. That's something that you'd have to look, or if someone else knows how to do that or how that works, that'd be interesting. But yeah, they're doing it with this because obviously this reduces the expense for them, because if they were to do this with, like, for example, a more expensive 9950X or a dual CCD or a 9950X 3D, there's more upfront cost because it costs them more money to buy those CPUs because they're priced higher than a single CCD, for example. So, and this is kind of like a pilot project. So really interesting, though. Very, very interesting thing. So I did want to mention this because this is, I like what they're doing. I like what they're doing with this. This is an interesting idea. In other news, real quick, just running out of time. Hogwarts Legacy 2 reportedly won't be a live service. I never expected it to be a live service, so that's kind of weird. The Hogwarts Definitive Edition to include DLC. So this game was actually pretty good. This was one of the best games that came out in 2023. It was certainly one of the unique games that really stood out of the games that came out that year. And there were a lot of good games that came out in 2023. That was a big year for gaming. We got, like, you know, memorable hits like Forspoken that year, you know, and Armored Core 6 and Starfield, you know, like that kind of stuff. So, Lost Soul aside, PC system requirements are revealed. The 5070 Ti is recommended for ultra ray tracing. So this is a game that we will probably be playing on stream when it comes out. And they're saying that you need to have, the minimum is the basic stuff that everyone knows. The recommended is not much better. Although, yeah, it's a little bit, the GPU, but the CPUs are the same. High settings, whatever that even means. I guess this is, like, what is this? Like, what resolution is this? Is this 1080p? Whatever. You need a 6800 XT for high, apparently, and an 11th gen or a Zen 3. 11th gen. See why I say 11th gen is the rival, even though it underperforms horribly in Monster Hunter compared to Zen 3. Like, 4080 Super and 700 XT for the high ray tracing, and then 5700 or 5070 or 9070 XT probably, 5070 Ti, and then 13th gen apparently, 13th gen i7, yeah, because apparently that makes a huge difference for ray tracing. So this is going to be an interesting one. This year is going to be the year of action games. So many action games. Ninja Gaiden got the remaster last month. Dynasty Warriors Origins, this game. Monster Hunter is technically, that's an action game. You know, the other game, the Wu Chang, whatever those other games that are supposedly coming out this year. The Chinese dev games, those are coming out. Like, some of them are coming out. There's like another gacha game that's an action game, and then Ninja Gaiden 4, and Kazan, the first Berserker, Assassin's Creed Shadows. I mean, this year is jam-packed with action games. So if you like action games, man, this game's got you covered. And that's pretty much it. So that rounds out this week's Tech Thursdays. 5070 Ti has the same RT of 4080. Why is 5070 Ti above it? I don't know. Probably because maybe there's something that you need to turn frame gen times 4 on or something. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there's a frame gen thing that's required here. I wouldn't be surprised with the way the industry seems to be going. Direct die mounting kit. Yeah, I guess. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. So, once again, if you're new to the channel, we do these live stream tech shows every Thursday. And if you have questions about building a PC or anything related to overclocking, RAM, CPU, GPU, any of those things, we can answer that live. And once again, thanks for tuning in. We will be live streaming Monster Hunter Wilds tomorrow. Oh, the announcement for AMD's thing is tomorrow. I think it's in, how many hours is it? Like 8 hours from now? So in 8 hours from now, AMD will be live streaming the reveal of the 9070 XT and the 9070. So stay tuned for that. I don't know if I'm going to live stream my reactions. That is so early in the morning. But either way, we will be live streaming Monster Hunter Wilds tomorrow on either this PC, so 9950X with the Nitro Plus XTX from Sapphire, or I will be using the 9800X 3D with the Power Color Red Devil. So one of those two machines. We will probably look at Intel. We'll revisit them in a future video and some other content. So stay tuned for that. We're probably also going to be doing an overclock guide for the Godlike, because that one is way overdue. And Monster Hunter has like reignited the fire to like overclock CPUs because the game is so CPU demanding. So we may expect an overclock video for the 9950X, because I want to see if I can buff the performance on that CPU, because that CPU seems like it could do better in that game. So stay tuned for that next week. And as always, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys either on the stream tomorrow or on the next episode of Tech Thursdays. Until then, take care, and I'll see you then. Thanks.